We'll bring the meeting to order. Douglas County Board of County Commissioners, public meeting, and it's December 2nd in the year of our Lord 2021. And we'll start off with Ms. Bergens leading us in the pledge.
Thank you. If you'll all join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Amy. Okay, we'll start with public comment. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per speaker unless additional time is granted by the board chairperson. The Board of Commissioners uses time and light to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to speak. You will see a green light when you begin and then a yellow light which indicates that you have 30 seconds and that you should conclude your comments. Once the light turns red, please take your seat. In addition to opening public comment will also be taken on administrative agenda items that are identified as for possible comment or possible action. And closing public comment. It is requested that members of the public provide public comment on those agenda items that are identified as for possible action when those agenda items are considered and not during opening public comment. At this time, public comment will be taken on those items that are within the jurisdiction and the control of the Board of County Commissioners. Is there any public comment?
Good afternoon, board members and staff. I trust everybody had a nice Thanksgiving, but it's now time to get down to business. I'm looking forward to getting an update on the vested total units. The last update is dated 12/31/2020. It'll look promising, hopefully, for the Valley next year in 2022, but that update is essential for the community as well as you board members and the planning commissioners to know what our new status is. Today, I'm also going to bring up a new development in pre-application, the Clear Creek Schneider Ranch. In reviewing the 2020 master plan, many citations must be considered. We need to look at land use and historic preservation. Quote, this element discusses current and future land use patterns and provides guidance to property owners, residents, and elected officials regarding development proposals within Douglas County. It describes the county's regions, communities, and historic programs and policies. Land use in Douglas County is strongly tied to the desire to preserve agriculture and open spaces. Many residents support the idea that the county should remain rural and celebrate the heritage that started with the settlers of Carson Valley in the 1800s. Programs such as transfer of development rights, growth management, and housing balance the need to preserve the quality of life, rural character, and open space with the need to properly plan for growth and development in the locations. I have and will continue to support updating the community plans sooner than later. Policy L22, maintain community plans and regions to establish the policies necessary to reflect and enhance each community's desired character. As previously stated, I'm hoping the county manager will reevaluate decisions that cut the community development staffing budgets. Their workload is mission impossible, and both developers and community at large that engage that staff cannot be properly addressed. No disrespect to them, they are overloaded. Community plans directly related to Clear Creek and Ranch support preservation conservation must be considered, and this comes for planning commissioners and you as Board of Commissioners. The agriculture community plan is divided into 3 areas, north, central, and southern portion. This is on board that needs to be reviewed very closely when evaluating the Clear Creek Schneider Ranch individual project not related to Clear Creek. The Indian Hills Jacks Valley community plan is also something that needs to be looked at. As previously stated in my November 18 written comments, this pristine and iconic example of county agriculture land will forever be blemished by this proposal. Careful and thoughtful planning of development to preserve this treasured site is essential. Thank you for the opportunity.
Ma'am, before you leave, could you state your name for the record?
Sorry, I wrote it down. Ellie Waller. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Waller. Next.
Thank you. Hello, commissioners and staff. Thank you for your time today. My name is Christian Waskowitz. I'm owner of Alpensier Incorporated. We are a specialty coffee roaster, food manufacturer and distributor located here in Douglas County. We're 30 years in the Sierra Nevada region. I'd like to register some comments today on agenda item number 4, if I may. I do have some prior engagements which prevent me from staying for the duration of the meeting. So if it's okay with you, I will need to depart following my comments. We recently have purchased the building in which we've been operating for 13 years over in the Meridian Business Park. And it was brought to our attention just recently that there is a possible action to change the zoning over in our area there from light industrial to general industrial to allow the relocation or the incoming construction of a large recycling facility. This has, for many of my neighbors and I, this has brought concern. We identified the Carson Valley and this location as a beautiful place to relocate our business from South Lake Tahoe. This was for us back in 2007. I feel that the bringing in of this recycling facility would adversely affect our overall environment out there at the airport, and would like to register our opposition to the change. Namely, we feel, especially as a food manufacturer, that the area would suffer from an increase in pollution, and that's on a number of several different factors. That would be visual pollution, noise pollution, air pollution, and potential groundwater pollution. This recycling facility, from what I understand, is not your average cans and bottles, but it is construction material and automobiles, which will, and of course, beside the size of it, would really change, again, our environment out there. We enjoy the fact we've got tech out there, we've got manufacturing, but again, it's really the beauty of the area that enriches all we do, and especially even for our employees to come to work and enjoy that. So the concrete crushing and scrap metal really could bring a negative change to the area. And thank you for your comment today, or for your time.
Thank you, sir. Any further comments from chambers? Mr. Turner?
Jerry Turner. I'm here today for concern of our kids, grandkids, and great-grandkids' futures. Our country is under attack. Continuing from the last second public comment, artificial intelligence now in computers, which teach the computers how to teach themselves. Artificial intelligence is now being connected to the brain via 5G radiation, nanobots, the internet, a synthetic mesh injection to the brain, nanobots from geoengineering, chemtrails, and vaccines. Plain tales now have murders. The trails can no longer be seen, but still there, dispersed. Nanobots, synthetic materials, chemicals, nanometals, and viruses in vaccines. a reason for the vaccine injections being forced on us today that work in conjunction with 5G radiation that kills cells, death, us, called COVID-19. Synthetic humans are in the process of being made. YouTube, Sense, synthetic humans to connect the artificial intelligence internet. And reason for the forced vaccines for the fake COVID-19 vaccine containing nanobots, nanometals, viruses, chemicals that help 5G kill body cells, us, called COVID-19. 5G generally kills within 6 months to a year from exposure, and sooner with a vaccine chemical injection that works in conjunction with 5G. The vaccines having a identifying chip that you can be located anywhere. 5G to transhumanism and to posthumanism is the goal. Read the book, The Scientific Conquest of Death by Ray Kurzweil of Google, senior engineer. 2 to 500 power dimensions, parentheses, which are frequencies, Earth being 7.83 hertz frequency dimension, and everything is a frequency. 2 to the 500 power dimensions have been contacted, and those intelligences are being used to develop artificial intelligence using quantum computers, D-Wave by Gordy Rose. My engineering calculator will not even compute that high. Artificial intelligence and new technology in Internet of Things will cause 60 to 80% of jobs to be lost to a new subsistence is being created called basic income, parentheses, equity of outcome, parentheses, and a social credit system, YouTube. The basic income, which will make most people become poor and control strings attached. The social credit system, the government will give positive and negative points to individual actions. Given enough negative points, not going along, the individual will be cut off from the system, e.g. the monetary system, to fend for themselves with no means. The synthetic humans will be non-connecting human brains together. The hive mind connected to the internet allowed possible by 5G brain mesh network radiation. The end game goal, non-human, and the world stolen from the human race. The interim goal, technological feudalism. Scientific computers, D-Wave, have connected 2 to 500 power dimension. Frequencies from beyond
Excuse me, Jerry. I went through some technical difficulties with the timer. You got more time than you had before.
Oh, sorry.
You're done.
Continue to the second public comment.
Is there any further comment from the audience? Any comment on Zoom? Marcia, Rand, are you doing that?
Natalie Wood for the record.
Now,
We do have some participants on Zoom. If you have public comment for opening public comment, please raise your hand now. And I will start with the first person. Hi, Jim. We can't hear you very good. Can you state your name for the record? Nope, we can't hear you, Jim. It's very high pitched like a chipmunk.
We have to hold off a bit till we get the timer fixed.
Okay. Jim, do you mind logging off and logging back on and seeing if that corrects your connection while we fix our timing light in the board chambers? And then I'll see if anyone else has public comment if you want to do that real quick. Do we have any other Zoom participants that would like to provide public comment at this time? Please raise your hand. Welcome back, Jim. Can we test your audio?
You can. Is it any better?
That is much better. We can hear you. Go ahead and state your name for the record and we'll start the timing.
Okay. Jim Slade. I have said for most of the last 20 years that the worst board decision this century was the approval of the Clear Creek Master Plan Amendment and Development. That was an area that the master plan stated had, quote, the highest priority for preservation. That decision by a pro-development board was incredibly controversial and only passed by a 2-to-1 vote. Alpine View residents, unsurprisingly, were the most concerned since it was right in their backyard. At least the developers agreed to make Bavarian Drive the access to Alpine View an emergency exit only. Of course, in the last couple of years, the board vote to approve the park proposal of the legally tenuous transfer of receiving area from Topaz to the heart of the Carson Valley was even worse. The commissioners Penzel, Walsh, and Rice would vote to approve both the master plan amendment and the development agreement was profoundly disappointing, as it violated many of the key tenets of the master plan and was contrary to the interests of the vast majority of county residents. Clear Creek Development now has plans for a new project on property referred to as Schneider Ranch. As I understand it, they want to put 61 homes on land where the A19 zoning would only allow 24. They would do this by clustering and would use Bavarian Access Drive as the access. I live in the first cluster development in Douglas County, which is more than 30 years old, so I have some knowledge about clustering. When our development was created in the early 90s, there were no added bonuses for clustering. So I recall there was a 160-acre parcel with A19 zoning, hence 8 homes were allowed. The owner clustered the 8 homes into one corner and in return had to put a conservation easement on the rest of the property. That type of clustering, in my opinion, is good planning. The clustering program never really took off, though, so the planning department suggested and the board approved adding a 50% bonus. Still, I felt it was good planning. Some years later, but more than a decade ago, when clustering was still somewhat uncommon, community development recommended raising the bonus to 100%. That seemed like a bit much to me, but when the proposal went to the board, Rob Anderson, engineer and spokesman for most Douglas County developers, suggested that they be bold and raise the bonus to 150%. The pro-development board, even though the agenda referred to a 100% increase, approved Anderson's suggestion to make it 150% bonus. That is why the clustering provision now allows 250% of existing zoning. That makes the potential positive aspects of clustering much more problematic. I would urge the board to revisit clustering in county code. I believe that the bonus provision should be rolled back to 50%, or at most 100%, as last recommended by staff. Clear Creek Development should also be encouraged to again pursue a conservation easement since it sits right next to the now preserved Schneider Ranch and a beautiful, pristine, rural agricultural part of the valley. Thank you.
Natalie Wood, for the record, we don't have any further comment through Zoom.
Okay, the chair has a quick comment. Some of us are old enough to remember during the Vietnam era, a group called the Creedence Clearwater Revival. They had a song called Bad Moon Rising. Well, we've got a bad moon rising again. Bank of America has forecasted the price of gasoline to go to $10 a gallon within a year. Our primary source of oil is now the Middle East. Biden's actions in Afghanistan has completely destabilized the entire region of the Middle East. And the Intermountain West, where we live, has no refineries. Gasoline is piped in from California, and those refineries only have capacity to produce gasoline. All jet fuel, diesel fuel that we use in California and from California comes from pipelines in Port Arthur, Texas. Biden and Congress have been spending money like confetti, and that creates one thing, and that is inflation. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a bad moon arising, and that will be a hard economic time on the horizon. Thank you. All right, let's move on to...
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
May I?
Yes, go ahead.
Ms. Waller asked a question regarding the vested plan or the vested projects update, and indicating that the last one that was done that she has access to is, I believe, January or December of 2020. However, I just recently got an update of that, I believe as of the end of September, Mr. Booth. I know that you're here. So Ms. Waller, I'm sure that you can reach out to Sam and he'd be glad to provide you with that. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from the audience or the board? All right, we'll go on for approval of the agenda. For possible action, approval of the proposed agenda. The Board of Commissioners reserves the right to take items in a different order to accomplish business in the most efficient manner, to combine two or more agenda items for consideration, and to remove items from the agenda or delay discussion relating to items on the agenda. And there is an error on item G. We're going to pull it, so we'll pull it from the agenda for a further review. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Nosad.
I move that we accept the agenda as written with the exception of withdrawal of item G.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Commissioner Nosad, a second by Commissioner Tarkanian. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries 5-0. Approval of previous minutes. For possible action, discussion to approve the draft minutes of the October 21, 2021 regular meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. Do we hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
We have a motion by Commissioner Rice, a second by Commissioner Gardner. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries 5-0. Okay. Move on to the administrative agenda.
Mr. Chair, I believe we have the consent calendar first to approve.
Did we do that? We did that, didn't we? No, we didn't. Approval of the consent calendar. You have a motion to approve the consent calendar? And that would be without item G.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Pardon?
I move for the approval of the consent calendar, items A through W minus item G that we previously agreed to remove.
No second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gardner, a second by Commissioner Rice. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to the administrative agenda. We'll start with item 1. For presentation only. Presentation on the activities projected and programs underway from the Tahoe Prosperity Center, including the Envision Tahoe project. Lisa, are you presenting? Yes. Okay, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Lisa Granahan, Economic Vitality Manager. Here with me today is Heidi Hildrum, CEO of the Tahoe Prosperity Center. The Tahoe Prosperity Center, oops, did I go too far there, Heidi? Nope, am I good? Okay, the Tahoe Prosperity Center is a nonprofit and an economic development partner for Douglas County, tackling challenges that are basin-wide at Lake Tahoe. By way of background, some of you will remember the Lake Tahoe Basin Prosperity Plan. It was created in November of 2010. In essence, a basin-wide comprehensive economic development strategy. It was monumental in that it brought together 2 states, 5 counties, and 1 city to develop this plan. At the conclusion of that process, it was determined that we would need an entity to implement the plan. And a year later, the Tahoe Prosperity Center was formed. I sit as Douglas County's representative on the TPC board. Today, TPC is still convening, bringing experts, community, businesses, and government leaders to work on community and economic development issues, adding value to each county and community. Periodically, I ask Heidi to come before the Board of County Commissioners, now that we're meeting in person, and give updates on activities, programs, and projects. And she'll get to touch on the Envision Tahoe project, which I'm pretty excited about. So with that, I will turn it over to Heidi.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, commissioners, for allowing me some time on your agenda today. I appreciate it. You should also know that Lisa represents the county extremely professionally and very well. We really enjoy having her on our board of directors. I'm going to just briefly go through a couple of our projects, and thanks, Lisa. As you can see here, we work on easy things like housing for workers, fire cameras, broadband strategy, workforce issues. All of our businesses, you all know, firsthand, are really struggling right now. And so we are the regional, as Lisa pointed out, the regional economic and community development organization. All of our projects really are designed to be regional in nature. So improving broadband infrastructure doesn't stop at the border. We try to make sure to connect projects where we can, and we're participating in your broadband committee as part of that effort. For example, other issues like fire protection, as we all saw with the Tamarack fire, show that it also doesn't stop at government boundaries. So that's why we're a small regional nonprofit and we partner with all of our jurisdictions. Our partnerships continue with work in this region, as well as, again, on the California side of the lake, North Shore, South Shore. But we are the only organization focused solely in the entire Tahoe Basin. So we look at projects, as I mentioned earlier, regionally. And as you'll see on the next slide, all of these issues clearly are regional. So this one was obviously in our backyard, literally my backyard. I happen to live in Myers, and we'll just say the walk that I take my dogs on looks a lot different these days. But the Tamarack fire in particular, 2 states, obviously it started in Alpine County, California. It ended up in Douglas County, Nevada. Also devastating to drive through and see some of the damage. But one of our projects is what we call Alert Wildfire. And these are cameras that are placed in our region to spot smoke early, let the firefighters know about the fire so that they can go put it out quickly. Those cameras in our basin have stopped more than 100 fires already. Sorry, the firefighters stop the fires. Let me be clear. The cameras just give the firefighters the information and know exactly where to go so they can put those fires out early. It works. It's been working really well in the Tahoe region, and we are working with the Google Foundation right now to expand fundraising to add more cameras around the region in Nevada, in California. This is another great partnership with not just Google Foundation, but with the University of Nevada, Reno, and other partners throughout the state of Nevada and in California, as well as maybe even beyond in the West. There's some cameras going up in Oregon right now, for example. So this started here in Tahoe, this Alert Tahoe camera system, which is now being called Alert Wildfire. So that's one of our regional projects. The impacts of the Caldor fire and the Tamarack fire, however, just really highlight the vulnerability that our economy has in our region. It is so heavily dependent on tourism. 62% of our industry and revenue source is from tourists. And that was only 40% a little over a decade ago. So we've really not diversified our regional economy. As you can see, that tall line is the one representing tourists serving businesses. And when you have a fire that shuts down all the roads into the basin, the workers in those tourism businesses, the business owners, they're the ones that really struggle to try to come back. And this is just fire related. We obviously had a pandemic that shut down a lot of our businesses as well. So between those two things, we reached out and were awarded a grant by the U.S. Economic Development Administration to create a project called Envision Tahoe. It's sort of the Prosperity Plan 2.0, which was done in 2010. So this is the update to that comprehensive economic development strategy. It really is focused on what we can use in our region that are our strengths. We're not trying to find a silver bullet solution that fix all the problems, obviously. It's very representative of the region. We have a basin-wide steering committee. We have our resiliency committee on our board, of which Lisa is one of the representatives, and many others contributing to this effort. So we have been doing some data that shows that we definitely need to look at ways to diversify our regional economy. Some quick data points include a living wage in Tahoe to afford to buy a home is $63 an hour if you want to purchase the current home price in our region, which jumped 35% just in the past year. The census numbers, we just got the initial results, and for years our population was declining, especially the 25 to 44-year-old age group, which is that prime family working age group that we really love to have kids in the local schools and workers in the local businesses. That had been declining. We still have seen a decline in that, but we did get a 6% jump last year. We think partly due to the Zoomtown remote work technology opportunities, but we don't yet know what ages that group is yet. So we're waiting for updated census data on that. But this is just another way of describing the fact that our economy is not very diverse up at the lake. Here in Carson City and down in Reno, sorry, I know I'm in Minden right now, but in this region, you guys have some more diverse industries and opportunities, and that's a good thing for your regional economy. It means you're not so dependent on one aspect. And in particular, I want to point out healthcare services and education, which is a bright spot for us up at the lake as well. And another bright spot is the fact that the resident population in Lake Tahoe is very well educated. So some of these jobs, these healthcare jobs, the medical, teams at the hospitals, the, finance positions and things along those lines, they need positions for people who have college degrees or master's degrees. And we actually have a pretty highly educated population at the lake. They're just working right now as bartenders or working in the tourism sector. They're not using their degree, for example. So that's good for workforce development issues as we move forward on this economic recovery and resiliency strategy. As I mentioned, healthcare industry is one of our regional economic clusters. It's up there, and it's about $500 million of the $5 billion regional economy that we have right now. 5.7, so I guess it's closer to 6. And for example, we know that Barton Healthcare would not have invested in Lakeside Inn in the purchase of that property in Douglas County if they weren't hopeful about the future, about the workforce needs, about hiring the people that they'll need for that facility, and for the changes that they are investing in the community up at the lake. So we appreciate that. These are just some data points. We have so many reports and data on our website. We want you all as the policymakers to make as informed decisions as you can. So we want to always provide as much regional data as we can to help you do that. So all of this lives on our new Envision Tahoe page on our website. This is where every report that we're doing will be posted. This is where all of the meeting minutes and agendas and things that we're coordinating throughout this process will be. And with that, I will just say again, a huge thank you. One, for allowing Lisa to participate on our board as your representative, and for your partnership in this work on behalf of the businesses and the residents up at the lake. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes our presentation, unless you have any questions for me or Heidi. Just wanted to give you that update.
Okay, thank you, Heidi and Lisa. And any questions from the audience? Any questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Nosad.
Question on the fire alert cameras. How is that transmitted to where where the user will get that picture? Is it on cable? Is it a satellite?
So there's alertwildfire.org has every single camera that you can go look at anytime you want. And the UNR staff love to have people go look at the cameras. So please do. Alertwildfire.org is where you would get that. Yeah, I think it's .org. It could be .com. Sorry, I might need to double check that. But one of those two, .com or .org, will get you to the fire cameras, and you can zoom in. And I have to say, I was on that almost hours a day during the Caldor fire, watching it come up and hit Sierra at Tahoe Resort. And then the way the system works is that the firefighters are alerted as soon as there is smoke detected on any of the cameras, no matter where they are, it goes to that local district fire office. And those guys and gals are the ones that generally are, then alerted to know where to go and what to do.
Maybe I wasn't clear.
Oh, sorry.
From a technical point of view, how is that camera get its information to where it's got to go? Is it via cable, satellite, signal player?
Sorry, I misunderstood that. Gotcha. So each camera network is its own network system. Some of it is via cellular technology. Some of it is via broadband, undergrounded cable. It just depends on where it is in the region. So I could definitely have the staff at UNR get you more detailed input on how that all works.
Yeah, that's more than enough information. Thank you.
Heidi, I got a quick question, or two quick questions. Do you get involved with the flora and fauna at the lake?
Do you mean, do I get out and enjoy the beauty?
No, the Prosperity Center. I mean, so in relation to how much room the critters have up there with all of the businesses and expansion and everything else. I mean, we're competing with the natural livelihoods of those animals.
It's a great question. Yeah, the bears have been really active in my neighborhood lately. So I know, and then the walk up where the fire has gone through our neighborhood, you don't hear the birds anymore. So they've moved into a different area. I think I don't really know much about how all that works. I will say that the Tahoe Prosperity Center's focus is primarily economic development, community development, but we do want to make sure that we are thinking about the environment and impacts as we look at projects. So we try to make sure we see the balance as much as we can in that effort. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions from Commissioner Gardner?
Question. So if I heard you right, you said that the average worker in the Tahoe Basin needed to make $53 an hour in order to afford to buy a home. Is that correct?
It was actually $63 an hour, and that's a couple together. They would need to make about $137,000 combined to be able to afford the median priced home in the region.
Do you track days on the market for real estate in the Tahoe
We are
Basin?
not tracking days on market. I know the real estate, the realtors boards do track that, and it's not been.
And I don't care how much a person makes, it appears that the days on market is extremely small if properties are even getting on the market. It seems like they are, most of the realtors have a pocket full of buyers. And once they even find out that there's something that's available, I mean, they just pull it out of their pocket and figure out who can best afford it. So it doesn't seem to me that we're having a struggle with homes sitting for months or even days on the market up in the Tahoe Basin. So just my observation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Rice.
One thing I would like to point out is that number one, most of the areas in Tahoe are built out. We're no longer encroaching into nature. We have, especially in the neighborhood that I live in, I think there are 3 parcels in the entire neighborhood that haven't been built on yet. And it doesn't look like in the near future they will be built on. TRPA, in conjunction with Tahoe Prosperity, as well as a couple of other organizations, are attempting to get workforce housing in certain areas on the California side. Down at the Y, they have a project going now. I assume you're familiar with those, and could you enlighten the board a little bit?
Thank you, Commissioner Rice. Yes, I'd be happy to. So one of the projects that we did last year, or maybe almost, it was March 2020 when we finished the report, actually. It feels like years and years ago now, but it was a housing study for the region, the South Shore Needs Housing Assessment, and it identified the number of homes needed for the local workers that we have now and expected in the next 5 years. Another data point I forgot to mention earlier, but half of our workforce in the basin does not live in the basin. They live down here in the valley, they live in Reno, they live outside of the area, they commute in to work. And so the Sugar Pine project, it's called, at the Y, will be a new housing development located near a transit bus stop. So workers will be able to get, for example, to the other side of the South Shore for work at the casinos, or be picked up to go out to Sierra Tahoe or Kirkwood or Heavenly or wherever they might be working, and they'll be able to live right there in town. There's a brewery close by they can walk to and get some food or beers after work. There's a grocery store nearby. So it's a really good project because it'll be, I think, a little over 200 units, so homes for local workers, and it's located right in town and near transit. So it's a good project that we have been supporting. The TRPA moved relatively quickly to approve that project, which was also a good thing. It's stalled a little bit on the California state side. The state has, well, we'll just leave it there. I won't tell you what I think about.
Thank you.
Any further questions, comments from the board? The audience, anything on Zoom? Did you see anything, Marcia? Probably not.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Damien. For the record, there is no comment on Zoom.
Well, Heidi, we appreciate the presentation, and Lisa. So we'll be keeping an eye on what's going on up at the lake. There's a lot of people that like going there. Then we'll move on to item 2, the assessor. For presentation only. Presentation on changes to the fiscal year 2021-22 secured property tax roll due to the Tamarack fire, as presented by the Douglas County assessors pursuant to NRS 361.78 and 361.084. Trent, you have the floor.
Thank you, Commissioner Ingalls. Hello, commissioners and members of the audience. What we have before you today, we are presenting this particular item because it involves the Tamarack fire. Typically, if we discover any errors on our assessment roll. We put it as a consent item, but because this has been kind of a hot issue lately, we had a bit of a debate last meeting, or we didn't, but you guys did, on what happened down south with the Tamarack fire. And so this is just to update you on what we did specifically with this event and what we are allowed to do per NRS. So when the Tamarack fire hit, obviously that was pretty devastating. And shortly after everything settled down, I did send an appraiser out to take a look at the damage. That is one thing that we are required to do is inspect what happened. And so I sent an appraiser out. He did the initial inspections and came back and reported to me what he had found. He had also documented the devastation, really, what was damaged. Per NRS, this is 361-768, Section 3. We have to wait 90 days in order to actually take action. So we did, after that 90-day period, I went ahead and finished up the inspections. I did it personally. I felt that that was the right thing to do. And I went out and observed and documented the damage and made the appropriate adjustments to the assessment. With that, I calculated the assessed value that was damaged, and subsequently the tax amount that should and can, I guess, be refunded to the taxpayer. So what I did is I made all those calculations. I sent them over to the treasurer's office. And one of the things that we're required to do per NRS is bring that before this board and give a report on it. Again, typically we just submit it as a consent item, but we figured this time around it might be good to let you guys know exactly what we did. Excuse me. I do have the one spreadsheet that I submitted to you. Those are the homes that were either completely destroyed or suffered some sort of damage. And you can see right there in the second column, we have the actual assessed value that was destroyed. And then on the far right is the tax refund or adjustment that we sent over to the treasurer's office. This is not something that actually needs your guys' approval. Just the way government works, and I have to chuckle because I've been working for the government for 13 years now. It can take a while to get stuff done. And a lot of it is statute driven or meeting driven. You guys only meet so many times a month, but fortunately in this instance, we were able to just take care of business after that 90-day grace period, get these recommendations over to the treasurer, and they may be complete by now. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, there's a good chance that this is already done. One of the special, I guess, parts about what happened here and the actual taxpayer relief is in NRS 361.084. Because this was declared a natural disaster, we were able to give the homeowner, the taxpayer, up to 3 years to rebuild their homes and structures without being penalized in any way. And what I mean by that, typically if something burns down and everything is removed and they build something new, we've got to bring all of that, the new improvements on as new value, which is taxed as new. And in this case, they actually still get to carry over the benefit of the tax cap for up to 3 years. So that's pretty cool. Let's see. I don't know if there's that much more to report to you guys. I really wanted to open it up for questions and seeing if you guys had anything for me that I could answer to the Tamarack fire, and I guess shoot anything that had to do with assessment at this point.
Thanks, Trent. Any questions from the audience? Bringing it back to the board, comments, questions from the board. Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Trent, I really appreciate you bringing this forward and taking the time to to come here personally and explain this to us versus putting it on the consent calendar. I really appreciate that. I think it's good for the public to hear that. And I think it's good to have it on the record. So I appreciate that. And I'm sure that the homeowners also appreciate it. So thank you.
So Trent, how would this be available to people who are affected by this fire? How would they find it? Is it on the county website or available through your office?
Do you mean these numbers specifically, like what we did?
Well, even individually, I mean, somebody may not realize or something that their tax base has changed. So would they go to the assessor's portion of the county website? Is it updated already, or?
I think I can answer that question. Yes. So the assessor's website does get updated. However, our lien date is July 1st of any given year. So that the actual assessment has to stay the same throughout the year. So if we have to make a change such as this, we've got to send it over to the treasurer, and the treasurer can make an adjustment on the taxes. And then we put all sorts of notes in there explaining why it happened. But no, the actual assessment will not be updated. Pretty quick here. Actually, you guys may already have them. Yesterday, we sent out our Christmas cards, and everybody got their assessment notice. You're welcome. And the assessment notice will reflect the changes that have been made for the 22-23 tax year. So what we did make here does reflect for the 22-23 tax year. I think it's also important to tell you guys, and I guess anybody who's listening, that these parcels that were damaged, not only did we take down the improvements as appropriate, but we also discounted the land 50% on all of these. So the taxpayer will see a 50% reduction on the land portion as well for next year. And every year we'll go out and inspect and determine what the condition is of each parcel. So it's further reduced. And with that, the tax cap is actually reset for them. So it's going to have a long-term effect on the amount of taxes they pay.
Another quick question. I haven't talked to some of these ranchers, but some of the guys I know that they were moving their livestock because of the fire. Were some of the ag areas affected by the fire directly?
I don't know the answer to that. I had another appraiser who was dealing with that area. Typically, the ag areas, I mean, they very well could. Given where the Tamarack fire was, I would have to say probably not. But if they were, we would have, and the land was burned, we would have given them the same discount. But anything that I inspected was not ag related.
Any further questions from the board? Trent, thank you very much. And yeah, it was quite an event for our little county. So, and I'm sure that this will help these folks a lot. So well done. And all right,
So,
thank you for the presentation. Oh, Commissioner Gardner.
Yeah, before we go any further, Mr. Chair, I believe we've all received a notice from our PIO. The sheriff was in attendance earlier, and he came over to me and indicated that because of this threat of a possible bomb up in the North Walmart area, he had to excuse himself from the meeting. So I wanted to pass that along and indicate that he excused himself to go up to address that issue. So I don't know what but they are asking that all of our residents, so those people who are online and watching this, should be aware that he's asking that all of our residents avoid using that area at this point in time. So I don't know if Patrick looks like he has something else to report.
Yeah, just a minor correction. I just read the release, and it's the Walmart bill on Grant, and the store is currently closed until further notice.
Great. All right, Trent. Okay, moving on. For possible action. Discussion on the 24-month review of the adopted development agreements between Douglas County and the following entities. Number one, Mica Drive LLC, the cottages at Indian Hills. Number two, Park Haven Estates, Armill Properties LLC. Number three, Montera 270 LLC, formerly Park Place, and Perry Enterprises LLC. Sam Booth, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the commission. Just 1 second, and I will pull this presentation up and share on Zoom. Wow. Switch microphones here. Once again, thank you, Chairman. Sam Booth with Community Development for the record. This afternoon, and this item number 3 on your agenda is here today as a 24-month review of development agreements. This round of development agreements up for review includes Mica Drive, Park Haven Estates, Montera, and Perry Enterprises. This review is being conducted in accordance with Douglas County Code Title 20, as well as NRS that requires the Board of Commissioners to review development agreements every 24 months. So I have just a few slides to go over each of the development agreements here and just to hit some of the high points. There is a staff report in your packet that starts on page 432. And feel free to stop me if you have questions along the way, or once we get to the end, if you want me to go back, please just let me know. So the first development agreement that we have up for review is the Mica Drive LLC, also known as the Cottages at Indian Hills Development Agreement. This is located at Vista Grande Boulevard and Mica Drive in Indian Hills, which would be, it's on the west side of 395. This was approved as a planned development and tentative subdivision map in July of 2005. It included 48 single-family lots. And you can see in the bottom right corner, there's a Google image of the site. This is about a year old. Both of the roads on each side of, that's Vista Grande running north-south, and Mica is at the north end of this. But both of the roads, as well as the cul-de-sacs on each side, have all been constructed, and there are homes under construction today. The development agreement for this site was approved in May of 2013. It included some off-site improvements for sewer and water facilities, as well as the approval of the phases and the timelines. The first amendment to the development agreement was approved in 2016. And as I said, phase 1 and phase 2 maps, they have recorded, and the improvements and infrastructure within this agreement has been completed. The only thing left to be completed is the landscaping, and the developer, which is the property is now sold to Carter Hill Homes, and Carter Hill has posted securities for the landscaping. The reason that they're awaiting finalizing the landscaping is once construction is finalized on each phase of the units there, they'll go in to install the landscaping so that it's not disturbed during construction of the homes. As I said, building permits have been issued for 20 of the 48 homes. And just to recap on this development agreement, in the report, we say that we believe it's compliant with the development agreement. And once the construction of the homes is completed and the landscaping is installed, we'll release the security back to the property owner. And I believe the terms of the development agreement will be fulfilled at that time.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask one quick question concerning this before we moved on? Sam, is there a deadline of when the homes have to be built?
The deadline, Commissioner Tarkanian, was for the maps to be recorded. And so once the maps are recorded, there's not a timeline on the homes other than the building permits. Once they're issued, the timelines for calling in your inspections and moving through that process.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Nosad.
Yeah, Mr. Booth, I'm curious about the First Amendment approved on May 2016. What was that amendment about?
Good question, Commissioner Nosad. I left that out of the presentation. Let me just review my notes here. Because the phase one, there were some improvements in phase one that were not complete, and the applicant asked to extend the time to record the map for phase two. So the applicant didn't meet the recording deadlines under the original agreement. They came back and approached the county, and in May of 2016, they were granted that amendment to the development agreement to extend those recording timelines.
Thank you.
The second development agreement we have up for review today is with Parkhaven Estates and Armill Properties. This is located north of Stephanie Lane, northwest of the East Fork Fire Station in Johnson Lane. There's a small vicinity map on the slide there. This development agreement, or excuse me, the development was approved in 2004 for 16 1-acre lots, and the site is zoned single-family 1 acre zoning. The development agreement was then approved after that in August of 2005. Later in 2006, the county denied a modification that was requested by the applicant to the tentative subdivision map. There was litigation over the county denying that. And in 2007, there was a settlement agreement that was reached, which allowed for additional lots to be constructed and determined the responsibilities for the owner and the county drainage and sewer improvements. There were some off-site improvements serving the site. There's some floodplain from the east of the site that had to be accommodated as well. In 2018, the applicant came back and received an approval of a new tentative subdivision map. And this tentative subdivision map was approved for 25 lots. And there were two, I believe, in the report, there were 2 open space parcels to accommodate some of the floodplain adjacent to the property. So that tentative subdivision map was approved in 2018. They have 4 years to record the map. So the final map must be recorded by October of 22. Engineering in community development is currently reviewing a site improvement permit, but that permit has not yet been issued. And once that's issued, they'll start construction on the improvements in the development. And once the improvements are constructed or at least secured for, they could record that map. So they'll be working towards that and having a little less than a year now. But as of today, the development is compliant with the development agreement.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask another question? Is there a deadline on when they have to build the homes here? Now, I understand the maps you've already said, but the homes I'm referring to. Let's see.
There would not be a deadline here as well, Commissioner. If I think back to that subdivision map approved in 2018, when a subdivision map's approved per NRS, they have 4 years to record the first phase. I believe this was all to be completed in one phase. So 4 years to record the map, but the lots can sit there after that. There's no timeline for them to construct the homes.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you. Mr. Booth, these requirements on that previous, I know that are these required to tie into county water and sewer?
Yes, Commissioner Gardner, it depends on the site. In each development is a little bit different, but 2 that we've just previously gone over here, both were required to tie into water and sewer.
Okay. The only reason we have a nitrate plume of that area, I just wanted to make sure that we were covering all that. So thank you.
Mr. Chairman, one more question, please.
Commissioner Tarkanian.
So do they pay the money up front again for the water and sewer? So they paid the fee of whenever this was done, as opposed to what the fee is going to be when they build them?
You know, Commissioner Tarkanian, Sam Booth for the record. I know in the past, the policy was with Public Works was that they would pay when they make those connections, when the homes actually connect to the water. I know that our Director of Public Works is now requiring that when the final map records, they have to pay the connection fees up front for each lot included in that map. I believe that's the process that we have today. The development agreement did have terms for, I believe, dollar amounts of what some of those connection fees were. Yeah, typically, and with these being older developments, those fees were paid at the time of connection.
So the problem I see with this is you pay the fees based upon what they were when you have the development pulls the permit or the map. Then they have unlimited time to build the homes. So the fees go up, but they don't pay anything different when the fees go up. I think if you're going to pay, you should pay it up front where it is now, and then whatever the increased cost is, you should have to pay it at that time too. And the county's losing a lot of money this way.
Understood. Thank you, Commissioner. The third development agreement we have for review this afternoon is the Montera Plan Development, formerly known as Park Place. This is located north of Stephanie Lane and northwest of the East Fork Fire Station in Johnson Lane. Excuse me, that's a holdover from my previous slide. We don't need to go over that again. Here we go. This is located east of Hayborn and north of Buckeye Road, south of the future Mueller Parkway. This plan development was approved in 2004 for 270 single-family homes and 46 multifamily units. Phase one in this development recorded in 2005, and all of the units in phase one have been constructed. The development agreement was subsequently to phase one being recorded, was approved in 2006. And this was regarding the design and construction of Mueller Parkway and Hayborn Road. In 2008, the board approved the first amendment to the development agreement, which modified the phasing and development schedule and the timing of improvements that were required to Mueller Parkway and Hayborn Road. And in 2009, the board approved a second amendment to the development agreement, which extended the phasing and development schedule and the obligations with regard to the timing and completion of Mueller Parkway, that extension, and Hayborn Road, as well as requiring the owners to dedicate a section of Mueller Parkway extension and the Hayborn Road, which is on the west side of the site, to the county. So the owner did dedicate the right-of-way to the county through a grant deed in December of 2009. In 2012, the board approved the third amendment to the development agreement with the new owner of phase two. At this time, it was Vista Sierra. And this amended the development schedule and obligations for completion of Mueller Parkway. By this time, the design was for a 2-lane urban collector, which needed to be constructed by August of 2019 for Mueller Parkway, and for Hayborn Road, also a 2-lane urban collector to be constructed by August of 2017. The next phase map in that phase two was due to record in 2015, and it did not record in 2015. And therefore, the tentative subdivision map has expired for phase two. So after that expiration, Vista Sierra sold the property to PPEG LLC. That is the current owner of the development today. And so at this point, with the phasing and the timelines for phase two expired, and the obligations for the completion of Mueller have also passed in the development agreement, a new tentative subdivision map and an amendment to the development agreement is needed to extend the timelines for the required improvements to Mueller Parkway to the north and Hayborn Road to the west, as well as new timelines for the recorded development phases. Also, I mentioned in the beginning that there were some multifamily homes, 46 units, subject to this. They're part of the original plan development that was approved, but that's phase three. It was not subject to the development agreement. That has recorded and construction is nearing completion on those 46 townhomes. They're just on the north side of Buckeye Road there.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Mr. Tarkanian?
Okay, now, my understanding, first of all, can you tell me, well, it's my understanding that Mueller Parkway is designed right now, at least for a 2-lane road. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and this development agreement requires 4 lanes, correct?
The obligations, at least as I know in the, as it was amended over time, were only for 2 lanes to be constructed.
Okay, so there's only 2 lanes. It's going to match up with the rest of Mueller Parkway.
Correct.
Okay, so now my other question is this, and this was brought by Commissioner Gardner when we had these discussion on Mueller Parkway before. How much of Mueller Parkway has not been built by the developers that have these development agreements and is going to be vacant when the county spends $13 million to build Mueller Parkway?
I have an image on the subsequent slide, at least for this portion I can show you. I think the next development agreement we'll discuss is at the far southern end of Mueller Parkway, and I can show you what we have in that area, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Cates?
If I could just add a point of clarification for Commissioner Tarkanian. So the right-of-way that we have for Mueller Parkway and the designs that we're doing is for a 4-lane road, multimodal path, and irrigation, stormwater infrastructure. We're only obligated to build 2 lanes, and depending on the development, it's either 2 lanes or 4 lanes. But I just wanted to point that out. It's being designed for 4. We're planning on building 2, unless we get some federal money.
Yeah, so, but the point I'm saying is we right now are only going to build 2, the county. That's the, whatever the cost is. But we're have some development agreements where the developer only has to build 2 lanes and some that I was under the impression had to build 4, but maybe I'm mistaken now from what Mr. Booth is saying. It just seems like there should be a consistency of what we're requiring and what we're going to put out there.
So to recap those previous slides in our discussion there, currently this development agreement is not in compliance with the terms of the agreement. The board has several options. The board could direct staff to bring back an ordinance to rescind this development agreement at a future meeting. However, the developer's attorney has reached out to staff. I believe he's in the audience today and indicated a desire to discuss amending the terms of this agreement. If this is desired, the board can direct staff to come back with an ordinance to amend the development agreement. Important to note, obviously, as we've discussed, if the developer does not complete those improvements to Mueller Parkway at the north and Hayborn Road to the west, that the county would be on the hook for making those improvements to make the connection to Mueller Parkway. And to the commissioner's question, that's what I have. 2 exhibits here. On the left side of the screen, this is the phasing exhibit from the current. I apologize, Commissioner Tarkanian. These I added to the slideshow, but these weren't in my staff report. On the left image of the slide is the phasing exhibit from the approved Montera subdivision. In green there, I highlighted the portions that have been constructed. There's phase 1, and then in the bottom right corner is phase 3, the townhomes. And then a portion of Hayborn Road has been constructed and that's on the far left side of that image. So the north and the white there are the different phases of phase 2, which is now expired. And there's a portion you can see from the green extending to the north of the image of Hayborn Road that has to be constructed. And then across the top of the image is where Mueller Parkway would be running east to west that would also have to be constructed. So let's see, it's a little tough for me to see here on my screen. The image on the right shows a wider picture, and you can see the Windhaven subdivision is to the left here. The green areas that I've highlighted on the image are portions of Hayborn Road and Mueller Parkway. So in the far, top left image there, that section of Mueller Parkway is the north end of Mueller Parkway that comes off of 395. and it comes in just north of the La Costa subdivision and ends basically north of the Windhaven subdivision. We do have an 80-foot easement for Mueller Parkway that extends east of that. And then we actually have 91.5 feet of right-of-way for Mueller Parkway across the north side of the Montera subdivision, and that's highlighted in red. The other right-of-way that was dedicated for Hayborn Road is highlighted in red as well. That's north of that green section that's been constructed. In yellow on the far right side of the map there, I've just highlighted that that is the portion of Mueller Parkway that the county's obligated to construct up to the Montera development agreement. So the portions that we're discussing with this development agreement are Hayborn Road, and then from the green section on the left side of the image to the yellow section on the right side of the image. So once again, this development agreement is not in compliant with, today the development agreement is not in compliance, and staff's looking for some input and direction from the board on our next steps.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Rice.
Mr. Booth, it's my understanding that the property owner in this case has reached out to the county and is willing to negotiate and try to bring the project up to standards. Is that correct?
That's correct, as I understand it. I've spoken to the applicant's representative, who is present today.
So would the proper motion be to extend the negotiation period for 6 months or so? Is that correct?
Well, Commissioner Rice, if I may indulge you for a moment, this has become pretty convoluted. And I typically don't do this, but I have a motion prepared that covers what you're talking about. And if there's no other further, okay. We need to have public comment, and we'll bring it back to the board.
We do.
Is that okay?
And if I can, Chairman.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
I do just have one more development agreement and
Before you move on.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Sam?
Yes, I would like to note that if the board does intend to take action with regard to declaring this particular developer to be in default, there is a two-step process that must be utilized by the board. The first of which is under 278-0205, you have to provide the developer with 30 days notice and opportunity to cure. And in the event that they do not cure within that specified timeline, under 278-02053, you then must give them an additional 60 days advance notice before declaring the contract to be terminated. So, and we'll have to hold a public hearing on that as well.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a point of clarification with that?
Commissioner Tarkanian.
In most contracts, when you can't cure in 30 days, as long as they make progress towards clearing, it continues to extend the curing period. Is that the same in this one?
Under the statute, it says not less than 30 days to cure. In the development agreement, if it's silent, which in this case I believe it is, there isn't a cure provision in the development agreement itself. So the board must give at least 30 days. If you feel a longer period of time is reasonable and just, you can, give them a longer period of time to cure.
Mr. Chair, I had a point of clarification.
Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you. Mr. Rice asked a question in regards to bringing the development agreement up to standards. And I want to understand exactly what that means. The current development agreement, as I understand it, requires the developer to build out 4 lanes of Mueller Parkway from connection at the top end where it currently doesn't exist all the way up to the portion where those counties portion is. It's what the development agreement now currently requires is 4 lanes. So if we're going to if they say that they're going to bring it up to standard, are we talking about up to standard of the current development agreement of 4 lanes or not?
So Commissioner Gardner, I think when we had some discussion earlier and Patrick clarified a little bit for me, the right of way that was required to be dedicated was for 4 lanes. And I believe, Mueller Parkway's design for quite some time has been for 4 lanes. But the developer's obligation in the development agreement was for 2 in each phase. And then for the county to construct the other 2. But I would defer to our Community Development Director, Mr. DeLay.
That's why I was asking for clarification.
This is Tom Delaire for the record, Community Development Director. If you on packet page 595 of your packet shows the Exhibit F, which is the phasing plan in that we're currently referring to here, and on page 596, 597, and 598. I'll follow up with a detailed description of each phase and what's required. So when you look at phase 2A, Mueller Parkway, the developer was supposed to build 2 lanes going west. And then you look down on phase 2E, they're supposed to build 2 lanes of Mueller Parkway going east. And they have to prepare improvement plans. And then by the next phase, it is very complicated, but it's 4 lanes. So they get 4 lanes there and 2 lanes. It's a collector road, a rural collector, 2-lane rural collector on Hayborn, which I think is a detail is included, which is includes a center turn lane.
Thank you.
Which is what's built today.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, may I?
Commissioner Tarkanian.
So the first question I had originally was for Mr. Booth, and he said it was 2 lanes. Now it is 4 lanes, which is what my understanding was also. And I understand they're in different phases, but it's 4 lanes. So the property to the opposite side is agriculture, and they're not going to develop on it. But normally they would be building the other 2 lanes. But now we're going to make this developer build all 4 lanes, but let others not build any?
That's appears to be what happened, yes. And if you look at the La Costa development, which isn't up for review, but it's the next subdivision down, it's right where the terminus of the existing Mueller Parkway. When you go out there today, the existing Mueller Parkway is a 4-lane road. They were required to build it to their limit of their project on La Costa, which is where the terminus is today. That's paved, and it is a full 4 lanes with a divided landscape median.
Commissioner Gardner.
Mr. Chair. So, where my heartburn really occurs here is that previous boards have allowed amendments to this development agreement and have not required the developer to build this road in the process. They've allowed them to build out a phase. And so that's put us backwards on the build out of this. And so even though we're required in the next 3-4 years, I think it's now 3 years, to build out our portion of Mueller Parkway. Once again, we have no connection on the north end, no connection on the south end, and no method of compelling those developers to build those sections without going to the taxpayers of this county to take this over and out of their pockets pay for this. This is extremely disturbing to me.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Commissioner Gardner. Our Mueller Parkway improvement plans that we are proposing that our contractor is under design right now to build is 2 lanes of Mueller, and it extends from our obligation. It does extend from our obligation from the yellowed highlighted on portion of the map here on the east side of the project. You can see that that's the terminus of where our obligation is with the Park Ranch Holdings. And then we are proposing to do those improvements, and that's what you're referring to, right? Is with the taxpayers' monies, is that we're that section with 2 lanes of Mueller to connect the road so that at least it's usable. Yes, that's accurate.
Okay, we're getting way off of what this agenda item is. And it's getting very convoluted and will take a lot more time than just addressing the agenda item. So I'm going to bring it back to the public. Any public comment? Oh, excuse me.
I believe we still
got
do
one
have
more to-
Perry.
One more to go, Sam.
Well, I can just sum up the last development agreement we had. The fourth one today is with Perry Enterprises Llc. And apologies, Sam Booth with Community Development for the record. This development agreement or the land subject to it is located on both sides of Pine Nut Road, where Pine Nut Road and Mueller Parkway intersect. In 2010, the board approved this development agreement for the dedication of right-of-way and for the realignment of Pine Nut Road and for the dedication of the right-of-way from Mueller Parkway. And this was for the construction, requiring the construction of 3.7 lane miles of improvements within 7 years. Separate from the development agreement, but related to it was a request by the landowner to change the master plan designation of the property from receiving area to commercial on 37 acres and from agricultural to commercial on 20 acres. That request was approved, and along with the master plan amendment was a zoning map amendment that was approved to rezone 61 acres from A19, agricultural 19 acre, to office commercial and general commercial, I believe. Let's see, yes. The agreement was amended in 2013. I believe after the property owner approached the county looking to amend the agreement in order to have a break in the center median curb to allow the landowner to access his adjacent property. This is a field to the east. So if you're on 395 and you turn right on Mueller Parkway right there, Mr. Perry owns a field that's along 395, and there's a break in the center median to access that property. That center median, per the terms of the amended agreement, must be rebuilt when development of that corner of the property occurs or by 2030. So the improvements were constructed, and then with that amendment in 2013, the center median was revised. So there hasn't been any movement on this until in March of this year, the Planning Commission approved a special use permit on some of the land that was subject to the development agreement. This triggered a section in the agreement which required the widening of Mueller Parkway from 2 lanes, which had previously been constructed, to 4 lanes. And this is north of Pine Nut Road, so coming out of the roundabout there at Pine Nut. And this includes curb, gutter, sidewalk, and the landscaping improvements. Spoke with Mr. Perry after we sent these notices out. He was very confident that they would get their work completed before this meeting today. And that was correct. After we issued a site improvement permit in October, they have constructed the improvements. And as of yesterday, the engineering construction inspector certified that all work was completed. I believe our county engineer is working on sending a notice of completion out to the applicant. But this development is compliant with the agreement. A few things I have just on this slide here. In the image on the left, the red circle is just kind of highlighting what I was describing with the center median break, where that is located. That'll have to be revised in future years. But in green in the green circle is the area where the Mueller Parkway was widened from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. And then I just went out this afternoon before the meeting and took this picture. These 2 lanes, the landscaping center median, as well as the landscaping on the right side of the photo and the sidewalk are all what were added. The 2 lanes on the other side of the median there were existing previously. And that was just constructed since October. So once again, the Perry Enterprises development agreement is compliant as of now. That's all I have on the development agreements that are up for review today. The motion that's in your packet is to accept the report that's presented to you. As we discussed earlier, we're also looking for some input on the Montera development agreement. Thank you.
Now it's for public comment.
Good afternoon.
My name is Mark Forsberg. I'm a lawyer, and I'm here on behalf of PPEG, which is the current owner of the Montera development project. As you've heard, that project has been through multiple owners and multiple amendments to the development agreement, none of which involved the current owner. So he's coming to this new, PPEG is coming to this new, and is asking the board to accept the report as is and not to take action to terminate the agreement. I'd like to point out just a couple of historical things. All of Mueller Parkway that's been built so far has been built by private developers. All of the development agreements that require the construction of Mueller Parkway are tied to development. And typically, the obligation to build the road does not come until development occurs to justify the need for the road. So what's happened over the course of time is that these landowners have not seen the demand for the development, so they haven't developed, so they haven't triggered the obligation to build the road. So where it exists, someone built it because the obligation was triggered. Where it doesn't exist, it's not been triggered, typically. This agreement is a little bit different. It ties different phases of development. There's 8 phases in phase 2, and that's what's now owned by PPEG. And those have, as Mr. Delaire was explaining to you, different requirements for the construction of Hayborn and Mueller. 2 lanes at certain phases, enhancements to those roads at future phases. Again, the previous owners of this property and the parties to these development agreements never developed it. Phase 2. Phases 1 and 3 were developed, but they didn't have the obligation to build this section. So what we're coming to and asking for today, and what we've approached staff to tell them, is that PPEG is now interested in revitalizing that development agreement, renegotiating those portions of it that are hopelessly outdated. There's certainly no way that, even given notice, anybody could come into compliance because nothing's happened. I mean, it's literally a bare ground and no road, so, and no tentative map. So there can't be a cure in 30, 60, even 90 days, I would say. However, we're willing to come back, talk about the development agreement, talk about the terms, talk about what has to be built when and where, and the developer wants to do what his share of the construction of Mueller is as it develops. And we'd like to work with staff to negotiate how that's going to work, timing, when and where and how. We just need time to do it. Again, this developer is not responsible for the delays. The property is currently zoned to be for 6 single-family 8,000 square foot lots, and it's master planned into its designated receiving area. So it's an area that's long been intended to be developed in this fashion, and there's no detriment that I can perceive to the county to extending the time to do that. The benefit of that is that the county would get a portion of Mueller Parkway, and the county's already received the right-of-way, so that this development agreement has borne some fruit for the county. And so we just either ask that you accept the report or give us some time to have these discussions and come back to you with a concrete plan to phase this development or whatever it may be. If it doesn't work, nobody's lost anything. If it does, it's going to save the county the obligation to build a stretch of Mueller along this property and Hayborn. So to me, it makes no sense for us to line up and shoot each other, terminate the agreement, and the developer has no obligations, and the county is stuck with having to do what it has to do on Mueller. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board? Commissioner Rice.
Yes, sir. So what you're asking for is for the Board of Commissioners to grant you specific amount of time to rework the existing deal?
We would take a specific amount of time, and certainly we're ready to get busy on it right away. The other possibility is that you just accept the report and don't take action one way or another. And then at a future time, you can have a meeting if the negotiations or the conversations don't bear the results that you want. You can review this development agreement again. You don't have to wait 2 years. You can take whatever action you want whenever you want.
Thank you. Mr. Booth, does your office have a suggestion on how to resolve this issue?
Before we start digging into this, are there any other comments from the audience?
Yep, I'll leave the podium. Thank you.
No.
Good afternoon, Ellie Waller again. An overarching statement based on the review of the development agreements today. Most of them are over 10 years old. Some of the projects are started, some are not, some are out of phase. Much like specific plans, if the public points out that there's issues with the development agreements and the specific plans, as previously stated, staff does not have enough time to dig into all the things. I've reported violations in a specific plan at Clear Creek, Tahoe. So you're hearing the other side of the Clear Creek, and it's not their fault. They're understaffed. Back to the process needs to be overhauled. Both specific plans and development agreements, again, more work, but it's much needed. As stated today, to Commissioner Tarkanian's point, developers are getting off the hook for years and years of elevated fees. That needs to be addressed immediately. That might help the taxpayers not having to pay for Mueller. That's a whole nother issue. To Commissioner Gardner's point, I request, and all of you commissioners should request, an update on Mueller Parkway, period. What are the developers' due diligence obligations? Not sure when, as stated by Attorney Forsberg here, or Forsberg, excuse me. Again, I understand that a project once started will have a commitment, but we're piecemealing a road. And is this going to be at the expense of the taxpayers if we don't get a build grant, if we don't get additional grants? You're going to have very unhappy constituents, which becomes reflections in future elections. That is not pointed at any singular person in past or present, but the taxpayers should not be obligated for what developers should have to do up front. If they can't afford their own infrastructure, then a project should not be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Waller. Any further comments from the audience? Are there any comments on Zoom?
Natalie Wood for the record, no Zoom public comment.
Any further comments from the board? All right. I don't do this often, but I'd like to make a motion. Mr. Taylor, follow this and see if it works. All right. And Mr. Ritchie as well. I move to accept the development agreement reports for Mica Drive Llc, Parkhaven Estates, and Perry Enterprises Llc, and direct staff to bring back the development agreement with Montera 270 for further review by this board at a subsequent board meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to second that.
We have a motion by Commissioner Engels, a second by Commissioner Rice. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? The motion carries 5-0. We'll see you again on this.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Osad.
Mr. Booth, once again, I'm going to ask for a decent map that we can follow your dissertation on. Can you do that?
On this next item, Commissioner, or?
No, when we come back again.
Okay, yes, understand.
I'm talking map.
Okay.
Because we're really getting into the weeds on that one. And yeah, what's the time? 20 of, let's be back. We'll take a short break. Let's be back at 3 o'clock.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.
We'll bring the meeting back to order. And we'll move on to item number 4 on the agenda for possible action. Discussion on the possible adoption of an ordinance 2021-1583, a zoning map amendment from L1 light industrial to G1 general industrial to allow a 26,200 square foot industrial recycling facility located approximately 250 feet southwest of the intersection of Airport Road and Hayborn Road within the airport community plan. The subject parcel is approximately 9 acres in size. The property owner is SJR LLC APN 1320-08-401-004. Development application BP 21-0221. Second reading. Mr. Booth, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman Engels. Sam Booth with Community Development for the record. This agenda item number 4 this afternoon, and thank you for reading that, Chairman, is regarding ordinance 2021-1583, which is a zoning map amendment from light industrial to general industrial. And that is to allow a proposed 26,000 square foot industrial recycling facility. Little background on the application here. As we just said, this is a 9-acre site. It's southwest of the intersection of Airport Road and Hayborn Road. The zoning to the north, the west, and the south is LI, light industrial. There is one adjacent parcel to the north that shares a property line that's also zoned GI, general industrial. That was approved with ordinance 2011-1344. Zoning to the east, which is on the other side of Hayborn Road, is public facilities. Of course, that's the Envision Tahoe Airport facility. The site is located within the airport community plan. And in the master plan, the vision statement for the airport plan says, the airport community plan will focus on creating a state-of-the-art transportation hub while continuing to be recognized as a premier destination. The airport community will become a logistics center for commerce, offering convenient location for industrial and agricultural uses. So the applicant's proposal is to establish and operate a 26,000 square foot industrial recycling facility. He is seeking to first amend the zoning of the site and rezoning the property from light industrial to general industrial, and then also seeking approval of a special use permit to allow the recycling facility use. Staff reviewed the use and his development plan, and we considered this to be an industrial use. And so per Title 20, this also required the special use permit and the rezoning. The general industrial use is defined as any intense manufacturing operation or industrial use, including but not limited to batch plants, foundries, tank farms, refineries, junkyards, auto dismantling, which is not specifically listed elsewhere in this code, and that the use shall provide proof of having obtained and maintained, as requested by the county, all applicable local, state, and federal permits. The applicant is in the process of finalizing his architectural and site design, and next processes, if zoning on the site is approved, will be to complete a design review application. As the site is adjacent to the Hayborn Ditch, it would also require review by the Water Conveyance Advisory Committee and application to Douglas County to complete that prior to doing any construction on site. The conditions related to the physical build out of the facility will be placed on the project during the design review. However, there were several conditions that were placed on the special use permit by the Planning Commission. The zoning map amendment today requires the Planning Commission to review it and make a recommendation, and then forward it to the Board of Commissioners, you gentlemen today, which then is the final decision maker on the matter. As I said just a second ago, this use requires a special use permit. And this was approved by the Planning Commission in October by a 4-to-1 vote. The applicant at that meeting agreed to submit a report to the Planning Commission within a year after operation. There was some discussion by the Planning Commission about whether or not they make that a condition of the special use permit, that he come back to them after 1 year to give them an update. Ultimately, it was decided not to be added as a condition. And I believe that was why there was the 1 nay vote by Commissioner Nick Meyer. But as I said, the applicant did agree, even though it wasn't a condition, to submit a report or come back to the Planning Commission. There are 6 conditions that were approved with the special use permit by the Planning Commission. I won't go through each of these unless you'd like to, but the Planning Commission did review this and wanted to add some additional conditions regarding the materials being stored indoors or behind screening, and again, that they go to the Water Conveyance Advisory Committee for review and that any of their conditions be applied, and that the applicant must maintain all federal, state, and local licenses. Again, that's also in the code as well. So the subject parcel is highlighted in blue in the center of the image here, again on the west side of Hayborn Road and south of Airport Road. And if I go back, I think, so the proposals for a 26,000 square foot facility. It's interesting when you look at the Meridian Business Park, there are some very large buildings. I think this building just south of my green arrow here is about 26,000 square feet. So the building on this site would be about that size. Building north of that, that's somewhat behind the arrow, is about 50,000 square feet, just for reference. And then just off the map to the south is the AVK, American AVK building, and I believe it's about 150,000 square feet in size. The master plan future land use of the site today is industrial. And in this land use map, industrial is indicated with the light blue color. Agriculture is the green or maybe yellowish looking color on the screen here. In community facilities, obviously the airport, that's that purple color there. So at least as wide as this image is here, you can see that the 3 uses are industrial, agricultural, and community facilities. Within the industrial future land use, the master plan permits general industrial zoning, light industrial zoning, and service industrial zoning. And so the request by the applicant is to change that parcel from light industrial zoning to general industrial zoning. And you can see that indicated here. This is just a zoning map and shows it'll be a slightly darker color there. Very small in this image, so maybe tough for you to see, but just the northwest corner of this parcel is another site that's zoned general industrial. I think I've got a blow up image of that here. That is the image on the left side of the screen, that site that's zoned general industrial.
Can I interject? I mean, I have a hard time seeing that. Is this in the packet? Because I read through the packet. I didn't see this.
There is the zoning maps are in the packet. These I just put together today for the slideshow. Just wanted to give reference to parcels in the county that are zoned general industrial. And a correction to that, there's actually 5 existing parcels, but that's county-wide parcels that are zoned general industrial. And as I understand it, in 1996, when the master plan was amended, and the existing zoning that we have today, or zoning districts, were established in 96 thereafter the master plan revision, there were no sites in the county that were zoned for general industrial. And my impression of the reasoning for that is that general industrial is a heavy, an intense use. And the commission and the planning commission wanted to be able to review those requests for zoning on a case-by-case basis. That's also the reason for the need of the special use permit and review by the planning commission there. So this is just pointing out that in 2011, there was an ordinance approved to give general industrial zoning just adjacent to this site to the north. I believe it's a propane distributor. And then in Sawmill Industrial Park off of Sawmill, but it's just west of East Valley, there are 4 parcels in there that are zoned general industrial. Looks like approved in 2007 and as well in 2017. And I believe all of those sites are actually propane distributors as well. So we have a site plan for the site, and I tried to blow up the image on the actual building here on the left. But the parcel, the total parcels in that image on the right, it's a 9-acre parcel, very large. You can see that the construction or the development's focused just there in the middle of the site. So that 26,000 square foot building surrounded by an access drive to get around all sides of the building, the required parking per the code, ADA spaces, loading docks, those type of things. The applicant has also proposed in this image and discussed with the Planning Commission his intention to build an 8-foot wall around the entire site for screening purposes. And I know we've had public comment and just wanted to address some of the public comment we've heard on this item. So Mr. Adams spoke at the Planning Commission and I know spoke during first reading of this ordinance. And he was concerned about noticing and the distances being noticed and concerned whether or not the airport board was notified. So to those questions, the noticing was completed on time and in accordance with Title 20.20, which is our noticing provisions of code. Notices were mailed on September 30th to all of the residences or all of the properties within the radius. A 24/36 sign is also posted on the property, and I believe it's facing out towards Hayborn Road. And notice to the record courier was made 10 days prior to that Planning Commission hearing. Per Title 20, the way that we proceed with public notice is to be sent to the property owners. So I know there were some questions or comments about tenants in the industrial park and whether or not they had been notified, but we're required to send that notice to the owner of the property. Whether or not the owner notifies his tenant, that's not up to us.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a point of clarification? You stated that you sent the notices to the property just a second ago. Now you're saying you sent to the property owner. Which one is it? The property owners aren't going to be living on the property or even operating on the property if they're renting them out.
Correct, but the requirement per NRS and per the code is to send it to the property owner.
Yeah, and that's what I was understanding, but you said you sent it to the property. So I just wanted to make sure you were clear on that. It went to the property owners, not the property.
Correct. I think what I might have been stating there was there's also a sign that we have to post on this property, the applicant's property. But the letters that are mailed go to the owners of the adjacent properties. But you're right, they're not mailed to those properties in many times. In your packet on page 707, it does show that the Douglas County Airport is one of those on the mailing notice. So we sent a letter to the Douglas County Airport. Additionally, prior to the Planning Commission meeting, we emailed Chris Johnson, the airport manager. We didn't receive any comments back from the airport, any public comment on this application. Also, I believe in supplemental in your packet today was a letter dated December 1st from Handy Legal Services, representing 2241 Park Place Association. Just to summarize and don't want to go too far into summarizing, their letter is in supplemental with your packet. But as I saw it, they were concerned that one APN 1320-08-410-030 was not notified after there was an ownership change. And just in response to that, the applicant is just kind of how that process works. The applicant's required to reach out to our county GIS staff, and they submit an application and have to pay a fee to get noticing from our GIS staff prior to submitting their application to community development. So the applicant got his noticing from GIS, and it does look like GIS printed the noticing in the end of May. He submitted his application to us in July, at which time when Lorenzo was the staff planner on this, was reviewing the noticing list, the owners of the property matched the noticing list that the applicant had provided to us. So at that time that we were doing our review, the previous owner still owned property, and Lorenzo deemed the notice list, However, it was brought to our attention, and we did see from the assessor's records that this property in particular sold on August 11th. So that was after the noticing list had been submitted to us and after we had reviewed it, as it was in review by staff. And additional items, again, were being revised by the applicant. Staff was working through bringing this forward to the Planning Commission at that time. So the way that works, we deemed it complete in August after the submittal materials were received by staff. And August submittals go to the October Planning Commission. As I said earlier, it was heard by the Planning Commission then. And then we did the first reading with the board in November and second reading in December. So just to recap, it's a very long timeline for the staff's review and on the back and forth we have with the applicant and then getting this agendized for the meetings. So there is the possibility that properties can sell, in the meantime of, staff handling that application. But the applicant did what he was required of the code to request that noticing list. And at the time that staff determined it was complete, the property owners in the noticing list were all correct at that time. Another concern I think that they had stated in there was just generally about the general industrial zoning on the site being inconsistent with the Meridian Business Park and the light industrial uses there adjacent and around the area, and concern that the findings weren't being made. The general industrial zoning already exists, as I said earlier, on that parcel to the north. That is adjacent to the east of 2241 Park Place. And the master plan for the site, the use for the site was subject to the required special use permit. Other intensive uses would also require a special use permit. So if this applicant fails to construct the building and another applicant purchases the property, if you look at our use table in Title 20 of the Development Code, almost all of those intense manufacturing uses require a special use permit. So even if the zoning remains in place as general industrial, that new owner would need to come back to the Planning Commission with their business plan and receive a special use permit. And I'll go through the findings here in just a second. There are 4 findings for a zoning map amendment that the board must find today. Those are in your packet on page 687. And the first is that the proposed amendment is consistent with the adopted policies embodied in the master plan and the underlying land use designation contained in the land use plan. We called out several policies that we believe further the request for the general industrial rezoning. But the key piece here is that the master plan land use map has already designated this property as industrial and the properties on 3 sides of it as industrial. And as I said earlier, the master plan states that within the industrial future land use, general industrial is an acceptable zoning. The second finding that must be made is that the amendment will not be inconsistent with the adequate public facilities policies contained in the code. There is sewer and water adjacent to the site, and the facility will be conditioned to connect to sewer and water. Of course, we have will serves from all of the utilities as we require with any application. So our engineering staff and community development as a whole believes that it is consistent with the public facilities policies contained in this title. And again, as we move further through the review, we'll also be ensuring those things as this goes through staff review at the design review phase. And the third finding is that the proposed amendment is compatible with the actual and master plan use of the adjacent properties. As I said, all of the adjacent properties are master planned for industrial use, with the exception of on the east side of Hayborn Road, the airport being public facilities. That may be a concern if it were a different type of public facility. If this were a school or a church or something like that. Of course, as we said earlier, this is the Envision Tahoe Airport. And so, when you're thinking about the effects on adjacent properties, noise, light, dust, those type of things, I think those are, for the most part already occurring at an airport. And in many communities adjacent to the airport is where you see these industrial type uses. The fourth finding really doesn't apply in this case. It is that if this is a receiving area and propose to change the land in a rezoning that they must bring in TDRs, and that they must have a specific plan or plan development to utilize those TDRs. This is not receiving area. As I said, it's designated as industrial property. So that concludes my presentation. I have a recommended motion that's also in your packet. When you're ready for it, would just say thank you. And the applicant and property owner is here, and I believe has some comments to make on his behalf.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Nosad.
Mr. Booth, could you go back to the master plan quote that you made at the very beginning of your presentation that references industrial?
Yes, Commissioner Nosad, Sam Booth for the record. I think that was the, let's see here. There's two of them. There was one about the airport community plan, which says that it will be, the airport community will become a logistics center for commerce, offering convenient location for industrial and agricultural uses. And then I think I did also define or read to you the definition of general industrial use from the code, which was intense manufacturing operation or industrial use.
Could you read that in the part about the industrial in its entirety, please?
Sure. The general industrial use is defined as any intense manufacturing operation or industrial use, including but not limited to batch plants, foundries, tank farms, refineries, junkyards, or auto dismantling, which is not specifically listed elsewhere in this code. This use shall provide proof of having obtained and having maintained, as may be periodically requested by the county, all applicable local, state, and federal permits.
Okay, and the subject parcel we're looking at right now is currently zoned what?
Light industrial.
Why would we want to change it to general industrial? What's driving this?
Well, the short answer, Commissioner, is the applicant's request is driving the change in the zoning. Staff is reviewing and reacting to the applicant's request, his desire to change the zoning. But as I had said, the master plan says that within the master plan has defined this entire area as an industrial area, and this site specifically. And within the master plan, it states that general industrial, light industrial, or service industrial are appropriate zoning districts.
Okay, our parcel is light industrial.
Today.
And I'm having a little difficulty trying to understand why we would want to bring in a possibly hazardous processor, not the processor himself, but the process, and put the people of our county at risk possibly. One of the things we talked about was about concrete crushing and the possibility of there being asbestos in there. And what do you do to prevent that from getting out? So the first thing that comes to my mind was keep watering it down. That way it won't go into the air, but it will go into the ground. And there are several other arguments that I could bring up, but I can see no really good reason to change that to general industrial to bring in a junk processor.
Chairman, if I may.
Mr. Booth.
Sam Booth, Commissioner Nosad, I think I could, as I said, the applicant's here and I'd let him speak to his business proposal, his business plan. From my perspective, I can speak to community development in our review of the application and why we supported the application. So you're correct. The site today is light industrial. Light industrial zoning and the uses that are allowed within the light industrial zoning contain manufacturing, warehousing, and some construction type facilities. And I think the main difference typically between light industrial and general industrial is that light industrial is contained within a warehouse or within a larger building, so that the noise, dust, those type of things are all mitigated from the outside appearance. There are within the Meridian Business Park, there are some very large manufacturers, but from the outside, it's a very nice, clean facility, and that's light industrial. So as we reviewed this application, the applicant's proposing to construct a facility and contain his operations 100% entirely within that building that's constructed on the site. So to me, that was not unlike the other light industrial facilities out there. And just that's, just from a very simple perspective, our opinion on, why we supported it, that it's a manufacturing within the building. He is doing some not exactly refining or those type of things, but there is some dismantling of materials, of course, but it's not happening in an open lot. It's happening within the building. And I think that's what makes it somewhat similar to light industrial.
Yeah, somewhat similar, but not the same. Master plan was concocted here a little while back, and there was a reason for making that parcel light industrial. And why should we change it?
In the Commissioner Nosad, Sam Booth for the record, in the master plan, it just defines just generally, it doesn't get into the specifics of the exact zoning. It says that the county deemed the property suitable for an industrial use. And so the designation of the property is industrial. That was that, let's see if I can find it here. The map.
That's okay. That's okay.
Okay.
I mean, and you're trying to plead your case very well, but bottom line comes, if it comes to us and we say, okay, we want to stick with the master plan. The master plan says that's light industrial. That's the way it should stay.
Mr. Chairman?
Can we stand by just a moment and let's have the applicant speak, and then we'll get into questions. Write your questions down, or you can ask the applicant while you're presenting. Is that okay with the applicant? All right, sir, you have the floor.
So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and county commissioners, and Mr. Chair. My name is Stan Silva. I'm the owner of A&S Metals, also SJR LLC. We propose a recycling facility here in this area. Reason being, it's a great community, and we're a family-owned company. And our goal is to assist Douglas Disposal in a lot of their recycling needs, as well as cleaning up the locations, the local community. We do a lot of portable equipment. So we bring in equipment that goes out to landfills and so be it, and demolition sites. To answer Mr. Nose, excuse me for messing. Regarding the asphalt and concrete, we're not going to do that at that location. It's more of having the equipment on site to go out and move it to a location such as Douglas County Disposal there in South Gardnerville or Tahoe or wherever else we may. And so what we do is we go out and do local processing, and whether it's concrete, asphalt, scrap metal, we clean up facilities and ranches. And so we need a home base, and we need to be able to process that material. And so what we do is we have equipment that would be indoors that we do all the processing inside. And we're not a scrap yard or a junk yard or auto dismantler. We don't sell parts or nothing like that. We process material to ship it to end users, or not end users, but foundries and places that you use the materials, the recyclables. So to answer any questions, I'd be more than happy to.
Questions from the board?
Yeah, I have a couple. Okay, did I understand you correctly? And that you said you don't recycle on site, the concrete on site?
No, sir. No, sir.
No, sir, I didn't understand you correctly, or no, sir, you don't?
No, sir, we will not recycle concrete on site. No, and we need to have a home base for our portable units.
Next question, what do you recycle on site?
We would recycle scrap materials such as we'll use automobiles. We process and we compact them and ship them to shredders or foundries, such as in Utah, or there's foundries and shredders in Plymouth, Utah, around Salt Lake, or in the area, Oakland.
Again, I don't understand the recycling business real well, so bear with me.
Okay.
Are you recycling the scrap metal?
Yes,
or
sir.
Are you on site, or are you sending it to the Bay Area in Utah?
So we process it in a sense that we confine it for shipment. So we separate materials such as appliances. Appliances, one commodity, where an automobile is a different commodity, where tractor parts and so be it are different, also different commodities. So what you do is you separate those commodities to get the different values of them and ship them.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, you're not recycling these products either. You're just separating them into compartments that you're going to send to another place to do the recycling.
Yes, sir.
Third question. The area that I see are the four parts of what may or may not, that have to be approved to do a zone change. The only one that I don't think, that I even think could be questionable is number C, the third one. It says, and I may have to ask Mr. Booth this too, the proposed amendment is compatible with the actual master plan use of the adjacent properties. Okay, and I understand you said the airport, and that's fine, but you didn't mention the light industrial users at Meridian Park. So can you tell me how this is compatible with the light users at Meridian Park? If you know, and if not, maybe Mr. Booth can expand upon it.
Well, I can assist what I would think. Inside those buildings, they process or they conduct industrial business. And each business is.
I got to industrial is very vague in general.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean, I don't know what goes on in all those buildings, and neither does everybody here. I'm sure there's certain people that know certain things, but inside those buildings, whether it's a storage for moving storage, which is south of the property, or there's a manufacturer that manufactures hydrants and stuff like that and gathers as a distribution center. There's I think a media or a newspaper place there, and I'm just going by what I see driving around. So
maybe this would be better for Mr. Booth. Could you give us why you felt it? Because when you gave your presentation, you mentioned the airport. You didn't mention Meridian Park, and that's where all the complaints are coming from.
Yeah, understand, Commissioner. Sam Booth for the record. I think I had Mr. Taylor just pulled up for me the definition of light industrial. So I had the definition of general industrial in the presentation, but in the code, light industrial means any light industrial activity, but it's including and not limited to assembling, compounding, food or beverage processing, inside storage processing, treatment of products, construction equipment, repair and sale, scientific research, manufacturing, wholesale trade, warehousing, corporate offices, those type of things. And so I think to Mr. Silva's point, there's some intense type uses that are occurring today in the Meridian Business Park, manufacturing, warehousing, wholesale trade, construction equipment repair. In our response to that finding, we also said that there's that facility to the north, which is a propane facility that shares a property line with this and zone general industrial as well. Again, intense type, quite a lot is covered under light industrial and even more is covered under general industrial. Of course, we know that there's some warehouse and office uses. It's a clean area. It's a very nice business park. So staff is cognizant of that, and we'll be looking at that as we go through the architectural review. Just during the break, Mr. Silva was describing, the look of the wall he wants to build around his facility. The details of the architecture we're not reviewing here today, whether or not the use is adequate, but I don't see that a 26,000 square foot facility, if everything is contained inside, if the property is screened with a wall, that it would have an adverse impact on the properties in the business park.
So I have one final question, I'll be done. Again, we've gotten a lot of stuff from different people in town, our constituents. And the one thing that they keep mentioning, and I think Commissioner Noasad did too, was the risk or danger that your business could produce. And they were talking about whether it was asbestos or noise pollution or traffic pollution. And you addressed some of this in the packet already, or at least Mr. Booth did. You have a business that hasn't had any problems in other communities near this and so forth. But what I want to see, get your words on why you think this would not be a risk or a danger to the people within the community. And then I want to follow up with what you had promised at the end, and then I'll be done.
Okay, let me see if I can get all this right. So as far as hazardous materials, asbestos or anything like that, I mean, that was discussed in the 21st of October meeting regarding concrete and us shipping in contaminated. First, we're not we don't ship hazardous material for one thing, and especially across the state line, as well as any other contaminants whatsoever. I mean, yes, we'll be dealing with batteries. We will be dealing with, there is some oils and stuff like that it comes off of material, but what we try to do is mitigate that prior to having it at a location. When we go out and do cleanup works at ranches, a lot of times you'll find batteries just laying around the ground. And so we're trying to clean up that problem. And so we take it to a facility that is already prepared for any kind of hazardous material, as some people might refer it to as hazardous material, where I refer to as the recyclable commodity. And so all of our locations, we have 8 locations in California, in different parts of California, in the Central Valley and Monterey Bay area, which is probably very environmental friendly of making sure our environment is very adequate, and we supersede all of our abilities that the county and the cities, request of us. And so with that said, I hope I answer that question correctly.
There's no right answer. I just wanted to hear that. And then finally, you said you don't recycle the concrete on site, and that these other products like scrap metal, you just basically put them in, dismantle them, put them in containers, and you ship them out someplace else. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. We will have a machine inside the building that either presses it or just makes it into a product that you can ship. Obviously, we heard somebody mention fuel being Mr. Ingalls. Did I say that correctly? About fuel being $10 a gallon, which I own several trucks. We own about 40 trucks, semis, and I see that every day of how much fuel costs. So you want to maximize your efficiency on every load that you ship out. So our whole point is having a gathering facility that we can gather the material, get it to where it's capable of meeting any kind of weight, and maximizing our loads for our semi trucks and maximizing our profits.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Noasad.
My question is going to go to the 2 gentlemen seated at the desk. A very lengthy definition of industrial. What's the source for that?
The definition I read, Commissioner, and this is Sam Booth once again, came from Title 20, and it's in 20.660.040 in C, which is industrial uses.
All right. Now, for you, sir, when you say you're going to reprocess a car, are you putting it into a compactor that brings it out about the size of a breadbasket. I oversimplified, of course.
The size of what, I'm sorry?
Yeah, I'll say 6 cubic feet.
So depending on what kind of car, there's a lot more older vehicles in this area, which is really great. They become maybe 6 feet long by 2 feet by 2 feet or something like that into like a log, we call it. And so we press that into a smaller unit,
Yeah, right.
so we can haul much more.
We've seen the movies where people get crushed into cars. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, what do you do with the cars before you crush them?
That's a good question, and that's kind of a broad question. So when you say that, what do we do with it? There's not much really you need to do except evac the fuel and the oils. Obviously, you make sure there's no batteries in them and any kind of the freon from the air conditioning, and you compress it, and from there, that's when it goes to its ultimate maker.
So I understand then that what you do is you vacuum out the fuel tank, you drain the oil. What about transmissions?
Yeah, transmission, any kind of
Also.
oils, yes.
Okay. And you referred to the Meridian Park as a possible source of or a source of customers for your business. What else? Where else can I possibly find somebody to want to take and use your services?
Okay, I don't know if I really used Meridian as a possible source of material, but I think a lot of it is working with Douglas Disposal and a lot of different governing agencies around this area. We've done business in Fallon, Nevada. We go to wrecking yards that are overran with vehicles. We'll go in and clean them up. We do a lot of that processing right on site, so we don't have to bring it into a physical location, but we can bring our trucks in there and have them set and ready to ship out. I mean, it's kind of more ability to have trailers, extra equipment to go out and do a lot of the work. Locally wise, we can set material, get from ranches. We do a lot of ranch cleanups, and all of our locations in California are located in the rural areas. We try not to get into the big town effect. And I think we're much more aggressive and much more capable of doing a better job instead of competing with a lot of the large companies, being we are a family-owned company.
And Mr. Booth, judging from our reaction to the meat processing plant, and I think we came up with the fact, said, yeah, we want it, but not there. Is there any possibility of any land being out in the dump area where that would be more appropriate?
Thanks for the question, Commissioner. Sam Booth for the record. That was part of the reason that I showed the image of the 5 properties in the county that are zoned general industrial today. Out of all the parcels in the county, there's only 5 that are zoned for the type of use that we're discussing. And just as I know some of the land use out near the dump, I believe it's forest and range primarily. As you go out in Fish Springs and East Valley, there's a little bit of RA5 and RA10, but those are agricultural and forest and range master planned, and so they wouldn't allow a rezoning to an industrial, any type of industrial use. So really there's only a few areas, the Meridian Business Park and the area around the airport, in South Gardnerville, in Service Drive, and in that area in there's some industrial uses. As I said, the Sawmill Industrial Park out in that area, but there's not much land that's designated as industrial.
So something draws us to this particular parcel. What drew you to this parcel?
Well, several different reasons. One of the reasons is it is close to a local community, and it is an industrial park. And all of our locations that we are in, some of the premier industrial parks in our corporate yard in Castroville, is one of the premier industrial parks. And so we find ourselves keeping that expectation of quality and of how our buildings are. And we go on and beyond and above of how we take care of our equipment and our facilities. They are top notch. And I thought we had pictures on board. I think that they are part of the Planning Commission's the special use permit that we already had our facility pictures and everything. And as well, Douglas County's yard is right across the street, probably within 500 feet. And so they have semi trucks and everything going in and out of there. And I figured, well, that's a great piece of property. So I bought it. And I figured that in a small town would honor us coming in, not trying to be conceited or anything that you may think, but I am very proud of our company and our heritage. And we offer an incredible service, and we're very finicky about how we operate our company. And so we felt very comfortable coming here today, as well as coming here a year and a half ago when I bought the property. So, and like I said, I haven't mentioned to you, my family, my father-in-law lives here in Gardnerville. I've been my cousins and my aunts have lived here in Gardnerville all their lives. And so it's not just me coming into Gardnerville to do this in Minden. It was more of our company as a family-owned business, and it gives me great opportunities to come up here and have more opportunities to be in this area. I could have easily went to east of Carson City and did this out on Highway 50, but I felt that that's not who I am and what I'm about. So our whole thing is to be here in this area.
Okay, one last question. Do you currently hold a deed to that parcel?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Paid in full.
Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly, we have a number of people from the public that came today to talk, particularly, I believe, on this subject. So I'm interested in hearing what they have to say, but I do have just a couple of questions for you, Mr. Silva.
Yes, sir.
And that is, interestingly enough, I got a number of phone calls from constituents indicating their desire to have a recycling center here in Douglas County that does not currently exist. Currently, even if they wanted to get rid of an old appliance or a carcass of a car, they would have to take it to the Douglas County disposal out on Pine Nut Road or Dump Road, and they would have to pay them to dispose of it. So there were many residents that reached out to me and said, gee, we have appliances, we have other products that we would like to actually get paid for, for getting rid of. So we're anxious to have this type of facility in our county. And I had to, unfortunately, tell them that's not what this facility is designed to do. Was I correct in that process?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So obviously, I'm not going to be here to compete with Douglas Disposal. I'm here to assist them and make it more convenient for them as well. We will offer a service to go pick up an old car and get it out of somebody's backyard that is something that we'd like to be doing because we're into the recycling and scrap metal. But for us to be open to the public, I don't want, part of it is traffic. That was one of the Planning Commission's main concerns is traffic. So we mitigate, I'm trying to work this plan to make it work for everybody. And so to not deal with the public, it will not be open to the public communication for us to go out and receive stuff.
I'm glad to hear that, actually. Right now, we have a tremendous problem because we're surrounded by BLM land. And we have a lot of problems of people going out to the BLM land and dumping off their old vehicles or their old appliances because they don't want to take them to Douglas Disposal and have to pay to get rid of them, even though they're not usable any longer. And so I'm glad to hear that you would be able to offer that service to residents or our county so that we don't have continued, should this pass, continued dumping of used appliances and car carcasses and those things and what happens, of course, is that they become targets for our firearms enthusiasts. And obviously that creates a fire risk also because you have bullets that are bouncing off of metal objects and causing sparks out in this BLM land. So that was, I'm glad that the residents I think they'll be anxious to have that ability rather than have to go out to Douglas Disposal and necessarily have to pay for their items. The second question is the SUP that the Planning Commission approved, is that the only regulating agency, or are you also subject to perhaps in regards to hazardous materials with the Nevada Department of Environmental Protection and the federal EPA? Are you under their regulations as well?
Yes, sir. As a recycle company, we are under federal guidelines as well as state guidelines, as well as county guidelines. So, yes.
So do you, should this get approved, do you still have to go through those agencies for additional approval?
I don't know. I can't answer that. I'm not quite sure on federal, but we do have to apply for a permit to operate federally. So, and I think that's just an application. So.
Okay, thank you.
If I may answer or comment on your also in our industry, what we do is we provide local communities such as Santa Cruz County. We do motorhome cleanups, which that's probably one of a lot of counties' bigger issues. And what we do is we locate a location that whether it's at Douglas Disposal, and we have a motorhome cleanup day or something that, we tow them out there, we disassemble them all in location or something like that. So we do offer a lot of that stuff too, a lot of cleanup for the counties and stuff like that. So.
Commissioner Rice.
Mr. Booth, I just have one question for you. Is this project consistent with the master plan?
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner Rice. Yes, I believe it's consistent with the master plan. The land use on the site is industrial. As I said, the master plan states that general industrial is an acceptable zoning in industrial land use.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll open us up to the audience. Does anybody else want to speak? So, Mr. Silva, you're the only applicant who's representing your organization right now?
Yeah, yes, sir. I'm the owner of the real estate as well as the owner of A&S Metals is the scrap metal part of it, recycling.
Okay, I got a question from Mr. Booth. The applicant purchased this property and recognized what the zoning is and didn't check with you about rezoning before the acquisition of the property?
Yeah, I can just speak to, the applicant did do a pre-application meeting with us. I don't
No, I'm
remember
not,
if I was.
not pre-application, pre-acquisition of the property.
Yes, well, again, I don't know what due diligence he did before he purchased the property. I know when staff discussed it with him, we pointed out the issues, his proposed use and the existing zoning, and then it would
That's
require a
good. Any more? Thank you, Mr. Silva. We're going to go to the audience now.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Are there any questions or comments from the audience?
Roger Adam, for the record. Isn't spot zoning the rezoning of a single parcel of land for a use classification totally different from that of a larger surrounding area for the benefit of the owner of such property and to the detriment of other owners? Aren't Ordinance 2021-1583 and the SUP perfect examples of spot zoning? Isn't light industrial the predominant zoning of most parcels on 3 sides of the SJR LLC 8.98 acre parcel currently also zoned light industrial? Aren't there only 5 GI Douglas parcels, including a nearby 1.03 acre lot for a propane dealer? How is this justification for spot rezoning of an 8.98 acre LI lot to GI for a 26,000 square foot facility for asbestos laden concrete processing, demolition load and scrap metal processing, including the compaction of junk vehicle carcasses transported by A&S Metals big rigs? Doesn't this spot zoning violate the master plan as well as the airport community plan? How does a massive junkyard fit in a plan calling for a state-of-the-art transportation hub and light industrial zoning? Why wasn't the Airport Advisory Committee, that is not Chris Johnson, that's Virginia Starrett, for example, not consulted by the Planning Commission prior to their SUP approval? Why does a notice of public hearing refer to an, quote, industrial recycling facility? Doesn't that sound like plastic bottles and cardboard and newspaper? With no mention of concrete crushing, whether or not that's on-site or off-site, or metal processing. Doesn't the spot zoning inherent in Ordinance 2021-1583 place Douglas County in a vulnerable position for future lawsuits from neighboring property owners because of plan violations, noxious environmental impacts from transporting and crushing asbestos-laden concrete, as well as demolition load and scrap metal processing, in addition to increased traffic congestion from big rigs? Have you ever been to a junk vehicle scrap metal processing yard to witness the intense noise pollution? For the record, today I've presented or will present to the BOCC petitions with 58 additional citizen signatures for a total of 111 Nevada citizens in opposition to Ordinance 2021-1583. My count is that 20 of the 111 citizens signing their opposition to 2021-1583 are owners or employees of businesses located near the SJR LLC 8.98 acre parcel, principally in the upscale Meridian Business Park. Preserve the airport community plan, vote no on Ordinance 2021-1583, and represent your Nevada citizen constituents that live and work in Douglas County.
Is there any other public comment? Anything on Zoom, Natalie? Or Ann? Who's handling it?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have one Zoom public comment. Please state your name and your 3 minutes will start after your name is stated. Please unmute your computer so we can hear your name.
Natalie Wood for the record. Jeff Tillman, are you there? And if so, if you could unmute, we're ready for your public comment. When you state your name, we'll start the timer.
Can you hear me now okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Please state your name and your 3 minutes will start.
Yeah, my name is Jeff Tillman. I'm with Douglas Disposal. I just wanted to let the commissioners know that, the applicant came to us, months ago and talked to us about this particular facility. And we saw a real bonus, for Douglas County in the way that we treat and transport and take care of some of the waste that we currently get at the transfer station. We see this as a real positive to help the community in many ways. Earlier we were talking about cleanups. Douglas Disposal has done many cleanups within the community when we bring drop boxes out, but most all that stuff has to go directly to a landfill. With this company, we'd be able to process it in a better, safer environment. Plus we'd be able to recycle it and put it back to where it should go instead of into a landfill. So I just want to say, I've seen their operations. I know the way they do business and, it's clean and it makes a huge difference for this county. And I think in the future, as recycling this type of material, we're going to need to look at it more strongly and more stringently. And I do believe that this is going to help the community and, Douglas County, as well as Douglas Disposal. I think we can work together in a lot of aspects and areas and treat this waste in a much different way than the way we're treating it now. So that's really all I wanted to say.
Amber, could you please state your name and your 3 minutes will begin after your name is stated.
Good afternoon, Amber Handy. Thank you, commissioners. I apologize that I'm not available to be there in person at this moment, but I am the owner and operator of Handy Legal Services. I'm an attorney, a local attorney representing the Park Meridian Association, which is the 2241 Park Place Association. We did submit prior written public comment, but I just, after reviewing and listening to some of the questions as well as the presentation by the applicant, I wanted to make sure that there were a few things that were highlighted. The first and the foremost is whether or not appropriate notice has been provided. The community development presentation did note that I correctly pointed out that a notice was not provided to a surrounding property owner. While there was some explanation as to why that did not occur, there was concession that it did in fact occur. Because of that, we would submit that Douglas County Code prohibits the consideration of this ordinance at this time and must be renoticed and placed before the Planning Commission. But regardless, if your commissioners are looking forward and going to be voting on this, we would stand in opposition of this ordinance. In reviewing some of the public comments as well as the presentations, some of the things that were cause for concern was that one of the things that the applicant indicated was that the entire 9-acre parcel is going to be screened by a wall. That is completely inconsistent with the beautiful and immaculate Meridian Business Park that currently exists and operates out there. There are a variety of business types that are out there, but importantly, they're all light industrial. Again, as I believe that another commenter indicated that there was one general industrial small parcel, which is a propane distributor, which not only services the surrounding community business members, but also the residents and in particular, the airport as well. So that is consistent with it. Something that is, the applicant has indicated that they will be a processing facility, a home base, a hub, but then ultimately will be taking its product elsewhere. There's just no indication that the applicant will actually be providing anything to the constituents of your Douglas County. Some other things that after review of the application that have come to my client's attentions and wanted to bring some concern is that the likely noise, air, and water pollution from this facility will likely impact the people that are actually working in the Meridian Business Park, especially its employees. Second, the zoning change will likely negatively impact their ability to attract talent, including new employees to that area. Third, this will likely damage property values, having a new recycling facility. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions on behalf of 2241 Park Place. We would request that you not consider this, considering the notice issues, or alternatively vote no for this ordinance. Thank you.
There are no further public comment on Zoom.
Thank you. Okay, we'll bring it back to the board. Any further comments, questions?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner
Thank
Gardner.
you. The question of the noticing requirements has been raised, and I would like to get some clarification out of our legal counsel in that regard. Now, I understand that the noticing requirements are 650 feet radius. So while we may have, okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
So
Sorry,
I'll let you finish. I'll let you address
Sam
that
Booth,
question,
didn't mean
please.
to cut you off, Commissioner. 600 feet's the noticing radius. That noticing radius was extended to 650 feet, I believe, because the code also says if the 600 feet radius doesn't notice 30 properties, so the minimum is you must notify the nearest 30 properties. So it was extended out to 650 feet.
So could legal counsel please make sure that we understand exactly what the noticing requirements are for the record?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Gardner. Sam Taylor, Douglas County DA for the record. The notice requirements basically are for, as Mr. Booth noted in his original presentation, to provide notice to every owner within a specified radius surrounding the property. In the case of this particular property, because it is 9 acres, the 600 feet is the minimum noticing radius, but you got to keep expanding that out until you reach the appropriate amount of notices, as Mr. Booth just noted. In addition, the process that Mr. Booth described is the correct process, and the applicant did follow the process that Douglas County prescribed for providing the notice. In other words, we required them to go obtain the list of the noticing property owners, or the owners who are required to receive notice. They filed their application. In other words, they can't file their application without receiving that list because, as Mr. Booth noted, Lorenzo Mastino, after receiving the application, looks at the noticing radius to make sure that all the noticees are the current owners of the property. So we received that, and then subsequent to that, we further processed the application, at which point the applicant, prior to the hearing, is required to submit the notices. So the applicant followed all the noticing requirements set forth under Title 20. And more specifically, if the board here has concern regarding notice to that one particular property owner who purchased the property in the middle of the noticing and application process, conceivably, if they failed, the board members feel that that's a big enough issue, they could ask for a postponement and then provide notice to that one particular property owner as to whether or not they have any comments. But I see no reason why this particular application or a vote on this application should be postponed because, again, the applicant has done everything that is consistent with Title 20 and what we've asked them to do.
So I want to make sure that I'm clear on this. We have a responsibility by county Title 20 code to notice the landowners, not the tenants of the buildings. Is that correct?
That is correct. In fact, that is something that Ms. Handy noted in her own memo. It basically acknowledged that the property owners who are the ones who are required to receive notice. It's not the board, the airport board, although we gave them a courtesy notice. It's very specifically listed in terms of who is to receive notice. It's adjacent property owners.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rice. It's my understanding that this project passed the Planning Commission on a unanimous vote. Is that correct?
For the zoning, yes, but not for the special use permit. There was, I think Mr. Booth noted that Commissioner Meyer had issues with the 1-year reporting requirement, and he wanted the applicant to come back and have that be a condition, but the other members did not feel it was appropriate to have that particular requirement as a condition. And as a result, he voted against it on that basis for the special use permit. Huh? Yeah, but on this item, it was unanimous.
Thank you.
On the ZMA.
Commissioner Tarkanian.
Just to add to that, I called Mr. Meyer up before the meeting because he's on the board and I wanted to get his input on it. And he said he was satisfied that the owner actually was appreciative that the owner voluntarily agreed to do that. But so that's not an issue to me. It seemed like it was unanimous by the Planning Commission to have this. My concern is just the same language that keeps going out there about this having a harmful effect to the community, and the wording of the attorney, at least, the noise, water, and noise, water. There's 3 types of nuisances she said that was an occurrence. Can you just tell us what you guys have done to come to the conclusion that this would not cause these type of nuisances?
Yeah. So Commissioner Tarkanian, Sam Booth for the record. In this review for the zoning map amendment, we have just those 4 findings that are pretty strict and narrow in their review. And there's not much in those 4 findings that relates to noise, dust, pollution, those type of things. And it's, you know, as you had pointed out, there's 2 of those findings that relate to, is it compatible with the master plan and adjacent properties? 1 finding that I had discussed was for public facilities. Are there adequate public facilities? We believe all those can be made. On the special use permit, it did have quite a bit more findings, and they get into the detail of the specifics of the operation of the business, the hours, and more of those for noise, light, air pollution, you know, other things like that. Again, going back to, I think staff believes that noise, light, and air pollution are all mitigated by everything being within the building. Of course, as we review and do the architectural review of the building itself, county code requires, you know, lights to be shielded and downward facing, so they're not facing out. He doesn't have the entire 9 acres lit up with floodlights, you know, those type of things. Again, there's decibel levels that you can't exceed if there is noise or those type of things. The special use permit is a discretionary review and permit by the Planning Commission. If there is an issue in the future, if code enforcement's called out because there are noise issues or junk that, you know, that's on the property that's causing a public nuisance in some way, we could start enforcement action. We could notify the Planning Commission. We could schedule it for a hearing to revoke the special use permit potentially for the use on the site. I think that's why the code requires a special use permit and the Planning Commission to oversee it. More of the, you know, the actual environmental reviews, those come from the state, NDEP, and by EPA. And if there are hazardous materials that he's handling, he would have to have permits for those. And the storage for those type of things is all dictated by NDEP and EPA. And that was kind of our catch-all condition that we had in there that said he has to comply with all federal, state, and local permitting.
And
I'm sorry.
If I may, Commissioner Tarkanian, Sam Taylor again, Douglas County DA for the record. I would even note that Mr. Booth, during the course of his presentation, put the conditions from the SUP up on, through the presentation. And most of those conditions directly related to noise, air, dust, hours of operation, all those sorts of concerns that you just spoke about.
What about the water pollution? I assume the EPA and state and federal would be addressing that, but that's the one that Commissioner Noah said and mentioned when he first raised this question.
It's a little bit tough staff to answer that. We haven't seen anything that would cause water pollution at this point.
What would happen?
And if there was an issue, we'd probably, the first thing we'd do is notify the state, NDEP, and then our code enforcement Division of Community Development could take action, potentially ahead of that or in cooperation with NDEP.
Okay, if you will indulge me, I have a statement to read. The question before this Board of Commissioners is, what is your vision for Douglas County? The master plan for Douglas County was just completed and voted on last year, 2020, at the end of the year. Now a major zoning change is being requested. The question that needs to be considered is, what is your vision for the county? It is worthy of note that the proposed zone change is not the vision that past and current members of this board had in mind for the airport area. The county has already spent millions on the airport to upgrade facilities and put in a new and enhance the Minden Airport to make it a world-class regional airport for general and private aviation. Zoning changes from L1 to G1 is not the right thing to do. Currently, the area by the airport is zoned L1 light industrial, which encourages development of research facilities, light industry, warehouse distribution centers, aviation-related businesses, etc. Typically, businesses that have high environmental impact would not consider this type of zoning. The area has already attracted several high-tech businesses, and there are more that are interested in the area. One of the entities that has expressed curiosity is Industrial Light and Magic from Marin and post-production operations for the movie industry. G1 zoning or general industry is an area designated for heavy industrial. It could be anything, a steel mill or an oil refinery. And by changing this zoning, we could wind up with anything out there. To change the zoning would be a travesty that violates the intent of the master plan and would for all who use it. It would basically render the master plan useless. The master plan intentionally has areas designated for homes, retailing, agriculture, etc. This gives homeowners or a business an idea of what to expect in anything that goes on in the county building-wise. And it's the expectation of this county is organized by zones, otherwise we will have chaos. The businesses that requested this change is allegedly a scrap metal processor. This type of business is noisy, dirty, and produces many undesirable pollutants. The operation could go on 24 hours a day. The business has said it will be enclosed and will use water to keep the dust down. And that's great. We have a drought in our area and we already have water restrictions that will probably get worse. Where will the runoff go? Back into the ground, into our sewage plant? Who knows? This is not the type of business we want in our core area of town, nor should the zone changes be made to our master plan. All citizens of Douglas County reviewed and ultimately voted on the master plan along with the Board of County Commissioners and the Planning Commission. It is not right that businesses who come into our county and community tell us what I want a zone change for. This commissioner does not share this vision for our county and will vote no to change this zoning criteria. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, are we ready for a motion?
If there are no other questions.
A zoning map amendment for a 9-acre parcel within the airport community plan to change the zoning from light industrial to general industrial based on the recommendation from the Planning Commission, the staff report, and the applicant's ability to make the required findings. The presentation to the public comment received.
I will second that, Mr. Chair.
Motion by Commissioner Rice, second by Commissioner Gardner. All those in favor signify by voting aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
So we have 3 for and 2 opposed. Danny, I couldn't hear you.
Was a yay.
Okay, the motion carries 3-2. Thank you. Okay, we'll go on to commissioners. For presentation only, reports, updates from county commissioners, members concerning the various boards and commissions that they may be on or members of, or a liaison to, or meetings and functions that they have attended. Anybody have any comments?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you. Real quickly, number one, I don't know if I mentioned this at the last meeting, but it's possible that I did not. I did. We had a Nevada Association of Counties meeting, and during that meeting, at the request of Mr. Cates, who's on the China Spring Working Group, I did lobby all of my fellow commissioners in the 15 counties. Obviously, I was already lobbied myself, but the other 15 counties, encouraging them to pony up and help financially with China Spring, as this board did. So once again, I appreciate the vote of this board to allocate additional funds for that facility, and have encouraged my fellow commissioners on the NACO board to do so as well, Mr. Cates. So I wanted to make sure that was reported to you. And in addition to that, I just want to tell the community, Merry Christmas. And we'll see you one more time before the Christmas holiday. But my wife, I apologize for my attire today. My wife was not at home to inspect me, and so I got out of the house wearing what I wanted to wear today. So thank you.
Any further comments? See none. I'm assuming Wes doesn't have anything. Now we're going to go to closing public comments. At this time, public comment will be taken on those items that are within the jurisdiction and the control of the Board of Commissioners, or those agenda items where the public comment has not been already taken. The floor is now open for public comment. Yes.
Jerry Turner, continuing from the first public comment. Scientist computers, D-Wave, have connected 2 to 500 power dimensions, frequencies from behind from beyond Earth by other entities having the power and knowledge likely to take over Earth. The supernatural, as stated by David Rockefeller at a Bilderberg conference in the Netherlands in the past, by other entities having the power and knowledge likely to take over Earth if we do not stop 5G radiation, new generations, synthetic humans, and other entity dimensions. Watch the video, The Truth of 5G Dr. Graham Downing, YouTube, especially the last quarter of the video. Comments by Gordy Rose of D-Wave quantum computers used by NASA, Google, and others like DARPA. We are now being spied on in our houses, homes, and on the road. No place secure for privacy. Privacy which must be maintained for individualism and autonomy. What are some of the other activities used and created by 5G? Start with 5G is anti-human technology, stated by Dr. Graham Downey. See his video, quote, The Truth About 5G Dr. Graham Downing, YouTube, unquote. There are 33 men called the Olympians controlling the world boards and committees. The 33 Olympians has an inner core of 13. That inner core head is what they call God on Earth. Read the book, Pawns in the Game by William Guy Carr. That's in this building on the front counter that's been there for 3 years that I gave you. Read the 25-point plan on pages 20 to 24 or 32 to 36. Points 20, 21, 22, 23, 25. All 25-point plan connecting the dots for the picture, what's happening now, today. There are 23 men controlling the world boards and committees, which controls the Committee of 300, the United Nations, the World Health Organization, controlled by Bill Gates, a Rothschild bloodline. Is that the time up? Be continued in the next public comment.
Roger, Adam. It appears that the preceding commission, where we had 3-2 votes, that those 3-2 votes that were previously Penzel, Rice, and Walsh are now going to be Gardner, Tarkanian, and Rice. And for 2 of the 3 of you, that's not, the people who voted for you probably not surprised by your vote today. But Mark Gardner, the people who voted for you, one of the reasons they did is because you stressed the importance of listening to your constituents and not California special interests. I'm sure when they see the results of this meeting, they're going to be very disappointed. And you campaigned against the 2,500 homes for the Park family and how that wasn't representing constituents and that you would represent your constituents. Well, you certainly got some input today from your constituents. And from my perspective, you totally ignored it. And you decided instead of doing that to vote for a California special interest. And just share how disappointed I am. And I'm sure many of your constituents in your vote today.
Natalie Wood, for the record, no public comment on Zoom.